Lewis Hamilton thought he knew everything about his family. His stepfather Anthony had raised him with love and sacrifice. His mother Carmen had always been honest about their struggles and triumphs. His racing success came from talent, hard work, and the support of people who believed in him. But on the morning of the 2023 British Grand Prix, Carmen handed Lewis a mysterious wooden box with a simple note: "Open this only after the race. This will change how you see everything." Inside that box were secrets that had been hidden for almost 40 years. Secrets about Lewis's real father. Secrets about siblings he never knew existed. And most shocking of all, secrets about a grandfather whose racing genius had been stolen by prejudice and buried by time. What Lewis discovered would not only transform his understanding of his own success, but revolutionize the future of Formula One itself. Some boxes, once opened, change everything. This is the story of the box that revealed a racing legacy hidden for 3 generations. The sun was just starting to peek through the clouds above Silverstone Circuit. It was July 2nd, 2023, and the air buzzed with excitement. Today was race day for the British Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton could hear the fans already gathering outside the track, their voices carrying through the morning air. Lewis stood in the Mercedes garage, pulling on his silver racing suit. The familiar weight of the fabric felt good on his shoulders. He had done this hundreds of times before, but today felt different somehow. He couldn't explain why. "Morning, Lewis," called out his race engineer Pete Bonington. "Ready for another home race?" "Always ready," Lewis replied with a smile. But inside, he felt a strange nervousness he couldn't shake off. The garage was busy with mechanics checking the car one last time. The W1 Mercedes looked perfect under the bright lights. Every bolt was tight. Every wire was in place. Lewis ran his hand along the smooth nose of the car. This machine would carry him around his home track at 200 miles per hour in just a few hours. "Lewis?" a voice called from behind him. He turned to see Maya Chen, his personal assistant, walking toward him. Maya had worked with Lewis for 3 years. She was always calm and organized, never bothering him unless something was truly important. But today, Maya looked different. Her usually steady hands were shaking slightly as she held a small package. "This came for you this morning," Maya said, her voice quieter than usual. "Your mother dropped it off at the hotel about an hour ago." Lewis looked at the package in Maya's hands. It was a wooden box, about the size of a book. The wood was dark brown, almost black, with tiny scratches covering its surface. Someone had tied a purple ribbon around it, and the bow sat perfectly on top. "Mum brought this herself?" Lewis asked, taking the box from Maya. "Yes," Maya nodded. She seemed emotional. "She asked me to make sure you got it before the race, but she said something strange too." Lewis felt the weight of the box in his hands. It was heavier than it looked, and something rattled softly inside when he moved it. "What did she say?" Maya pulled out a small piece of paper. "She left this note with it." Lewis took the note and recognized his mother Carmen's handwriting immediately. The words made his heart beat faster. "Open this only after the race. Trust me, my son. This will change how you see everything. Love always, Mom." Lewis read the note twice. Change how he saw everything. What could be in this old wooden box that was so important? He turned the box over in his hands, studying it closely. The wood felt old and smooth, like someone had touched it many times over many years. There were small dents and scratches all over it, as if it had been through a lot. "Did Mum say anything else?" Lewis asked Maya. "She was crying," Maya said softly. "I've never seen your mother cry before. When I asked if she was okay, she just said, 'It's time for Lewis to know the truth.'" The truth. What truth? Lewis felt his stomach tighten. His mother had never kept secrets from him before. Carmen Hamilton had always been honest about everything, even when the truth was hard to hear. Lewis shook the box gently. Whatever was inside moved around, making a soft rattling sound. It felt like there were several small objects in there, but he couldn't guess what they might be. "Lewis," Pete Bonington called out. "We need you for the final driver meeting in 5 minutes." Lewis looked around the busy garage. Mechanics were making last-minute adjustments to the car. Engineers were studying data on their computers. Everyone was focused on the race ahead, but Lewis couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious box and his mother's strange note. "I need to put this somewhere safe," Lewis said to Maya. He walked over to his personal locker in the corner of the garage. The small metal cabinet held his helmet, his racing boots, and a few personal items. Lewis carefully placed the wooden box on the top shelf, next to a photo of him winning his first world championship. As he closed the locker door, Lewis caught his reflection in the small mirror inside. He looked the same as always, but something felt different. The box seemed to be calling to him, even though he couldn't see it anymore. What could be so important that Mom would cry over it? He wondered. "Lewis, let's go," Pete called again. Lewis took a deep breath and walked toward the team meeting room. But with each step, his mind kept going back to the wooden box. His mother's words echoed in his head, "This will change how you see everything." The meeting room was full of engineers and mechanics discussing race strategy. Lewis tried to focus on their words about tire choices and fuel loads, but his thoughts kept drifting. He had grown up thinking he knew everything about his family. His mother, Carmen, had raised him with love and support. His stepfather, Anthony Hamilton, had worked hard to pay for Lewis's racing career. They had always been honest with him about everything, or so he thought. "Lewis, are you listening?" asked Toto Wolff, the team principal. "Sorry, yes," Lewis said quickly, snapping back to attention. But even as the meeting continued, Lewis couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change in a big way. The wooden box in his locker seemed to be waiting for him, holding secrets that his mother had kept for years. As the meeting ended and Lewis walked back toward his car, he made a promise to himself. The moment this race was over, he would open that box and finally learn the truth his mother wanted him to know. He just had no idea how much that truth would change everything he thought he knew about himself and his family. The morning sun was getting brighter, and soon it would be time to race. But first, Lewis had to get through the longest few hours of his life, wondering what secrets were waiting for him in that old wooden box. 2 hours later, Lewis sat in his Mercedes W114 on the starting grid. The Silverstone circuit stretched out in front of him like a familiar friend. He had raced here so many times. But today, the track felt different. Everything felt different. "Radio check, Lewis," came Pete Bonington's voice through his helmet speakers. "Radio's good, Bono," Lewis replied, using his nickname for his race engineer. But his voice sounded tight, even to himself. Around him, 19 other Formula One cars sat ready for battle. The crowd of 150,000 British fans was roaring with excitement. Red, white, and blue flags waved everywhere. This was Lewis's home race, and the fans wanted him to win more than anything. But Lewis couldn't stop thinking about the wooden box locked away in his garage. The formation lap began, and Lewis followed the other cars around the track. Usually this lap helped him focus and get ready for the race. Today, his mind kept wandering. What truth did Mom want him to know? Why was she crying? What could change everything? As Lewis drove through Maggots and Beckett's corners, he noticed his mother, Carmen, in the crowd. She was sitting in the family section, wearing her usual Mercedes team shirt. But even from far away, Lewis could see that she looked worried. Next to Carmen sat Anthony Hamilton, the man who had raised Lewis since he was a baby. Anthony was cheering and waving, just like he always did. He looked happy and proud, not like someone keeping a big secret. Lewis pulled his car into fourth position on the starting grid. In front of him were Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, and George Russell in the other Mercedes. The red lights began to appear on the gantry above the track. 1 light, 2 lights, 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights. Then all the lights went out, and the 2023 British Grand Prix began. Lewis got a good start and held his fourth position into the first corner. The Mercedes felt good under him, responsive and fast. But something was wrong with his driving. His mind wasn't completely focused on the race. Through the first few corners, Lewis kept thinking about his mother's note. "Trust me, my son. This will change how you see everything." What could she mean by that? Lewis thought he knew everything about his family already. Carmen had been young when she had Lewis. Anthony had married her and became Lewis's father in every way that mattered. They had worked hard to support Lewis's racing dreams from the very beginning. But now Lewis wondered if there were parts of the story he had never heard. On lap 15, Lewis was still running in fourth place. The car was fast enough to fight for the podium. But Lewis wasn't driving with his usual sharpness. He kept missing small chances to attack the cars ahead of him. "Lewis, you're half a second off your usual pace through Sector 2, Pete Bonington said through the radio. "Everything okay?" Lewis pressed his radio button. "Yeah, Bono, I'm fine. Just finding the rhythm." But that wasn't true. Lewis was distracted, and he knew it. Professional racing drivers couldn't afford to be distracted, not even for a few seconds. At 2,000 miles per hour, a moment of lost concentration could be dangerous. On lap 23, Lewis was following George Russell through the high-speed corners before the hangar straighter. This was a good place to overtake if he could get close enough. Lewis had done this move hundreds of times before, but as he approached Cobb's Corner, Lewis's mind wandered again. He thought about the rattling sound the wooden box had made when he shook it. What was inside? Photos? Letters? Something else? For just a split second, Lewis wasn't completely focused on his driving. He turned into Cobb's Corner a little too late, and a little too wide. George Russell saw the mistake and took advantage. The other Mercedes pulled ahead, and Lewis lost the position he had been fighting to keep. "Sorry, Bono," Lewis said over the radio. "My mistake." "No problem, Lewis. Plenty of laps left to get it back." But Lewis knew this mistake was different from his usual racing errors. This wasn't about car setup or strategy. His head wasn't in the race the way it should be. In the grandstand, Carmen Hamilton watched her son racing and felt tears in her eyes again. She had been keeping this secret for almost 40 years. Today, finally, Lewis would learn the truth about his real father. Anthony noticed his wife's emotion. "Are you sure about this, Carmen?" he asked quietly. "Are you sure Lewis is ready to know?" Carmen wiped her eyes with a tissue. "It's time," she said. "Marcus is dying, Anthony. If Lewis doesn't meet him now, he never will." Anthony nodded sadly. He had always known this day would come. When he married Carmen all those years ago, he had promised to love Lewis like his own son, and he had kept that promise every single day. But Anthony also knew that Lewis deserved to know about his biological father, even if it was painful, even if it changed everything. Back on the track, Lewis was fighting hard to regain the position he had lost to George Russell. The Mercedes was fast, and Lewis was starting to focus better on his driving. On lap 35, Lewis made a brilliant move around the outside of Russell at Stowe Corner. The crowd erupted as Lewis took back third place. For a moment, Lewis felt the pure joy of racing that he had loved since he was a child. But even as he celebrated the overtake, part of his mind was still thinking about the wooden box waiting for him. The race continued, and Lewis held third place until the checkered flag. It was a good result for the team and for the championship. As Lewis climbed out of his car in the pit lane, the British fans cheered loudly for their hero. But Lewis barely heard them. All he could think about was getting back to his garage and opening that mysterious box. "Great drive, Lewis," shouted Toto Wolff as Lewis walked past. "Third place at home is always special." Lewis smiled and waved, but his heart was racing faster than it had during the actual race. Soon he would finally know what secret his mother had been keeping all these years. As Lewis headed toward the podium ceremony, he looked up into the crowd one more time. Carmen was still there, still crying, still looking worried. But now Lewis noticed something that made his blood run cold. Standing right next to his mother was a man Lewis had never seen before. A black man about 60 years old, wearing a Mercedes team shirt. The man had the same eyes as Lewis, the same nose, the same way of standing, and the man was staring directly at Lewis with tears streaming down his face. Lewis stumbled slightly as he walked toward the podium. Who was this stranger? And why did he look so much like Lewis himself? The wooden box suddenly felt much more important and much more frightening than Lewis had imagined. Lewis stood on the podium holding his third-place trophy, but he could barely focus on the ceremony. The British national anthem played loudly through the speakers at Silverstone, and 150,000 fans sang along. Usually this was Lewis's favorite moment of any home race. But today, Lewis kept looking into the crowd, searching for the mysterious man who looked so much like him. "Well done, mate," said George Russell, standing on the top step of the podium after winning his first British Grand Prix. "Great race." Lewis forced a smile and shook George's hand. "Thanks, George. You drove brilliantly today." But Lewis's mind was somewhere else entirely. Who was that man standing with his mother? And why did seeing him make Lewis feel like his whole world was about to change? After the podium ceremony, Lewis rushed through the media interviews as quickly as possible. Usually he enjoyed talking to reporters, especially after a good result at his home race. Today, every question felt like it was taking forever. "Lewis, how did it feel to race at home again?" asked a journalist from Sky Sports. "It was great," Lewis replied quickly. "The fans were amazing as always. The car felt good. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to go." Lewis walked away before the journalist could ask another question. He needed to find his mother and get answers about the stranger in the crowd. Behind the Mercedes motorhome, Lewis found Carmen waiting for him. She was no longer in the grandstand, but standing quietly in the team area. Her eyes were still red from crying, but the mysterious man was nowhere to be seen. "Mum," Lewis said, walking up to her quickly, "who was that man standing with you during the race?" "The one who looked like you?" Carmen finished his sentence softly. Lewis nodded. "Yeah, who is he?" Carmen took a deep breath. "Lewis, there's so much we need to talk about. But first, you need to open that box. I want to know about the man first," Lewis said firmly. "Mum, he had my eyes. He had my face. Who is he?" Carmen looked around nervously. The paddock was still busy with team members and media. This wasn't the right place for this conversation. "Not here," she said. "Come with me." Carmen led Lewis to a quiet area behind the team hospitality units. Away from the cameras and the crews, they could finally talk privately. "The man you saw is named Marcus Thompson," Carmen said quietly. "I've never heard that name before," Lewis replied. "How do I know him?" Carmen's hands were shaking. "Lewis, he's your biological father." The words hit Lewis like a physical blow. He felt dizzy and had to lean against a nearby wall for support.
"What?"
Lewis whispered, "That's impossible." "Anthony is my father. Anthony raised you," Carmen said gently. "Anthony has been your father in every way that matters. But he's not your biological father." Lewis stared at his mother in shock. For 38 years, he had believed that Anthony Hamilton was his real father. Anthony had been there for every race, every victory, every disappointment. Anthony had worked multiple jobs to pay for Lewis's karting career. When Lewis was young, "Why are you telling me this now?" Lewis asked, his voice barely audible. Carmen wiped tears from her eyes. "Because Marcus is dying, Lewis. He has cancer. He came to England to see you race one last time before—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Lewis felt like the ground was moving under his feet. Everything he thought he knew about his family was suddenly different. "Where is he now?" Lewis asked. "He's waiting," Carmen said. "He's been waiting to meet you for almost 40 years. But he wanted me to explain first. He wanted you to have time to understand." Lewis thought about the wooden box sitting in his driver's room. Suddenly, his mother's note made more sense. This box contained the truth that would change everything. "The box," Lewis said. "It's from him, isn't it?" Carmen nodded. "Marcus gave it to me years ago. He said if anything ever happened to you, I should give it to you. When the doctors told him about the cancer, he asked me to bring it to you." Lewis felt angry and confused at the same time. "Mum, how could you keep this secret for so long? How could you let me believe Anthony was my biological father?" "Because Anthony is your father," Carmen said firmly. "He chose to be your father when Marcus couldn't. He loved you from the day you were born. That hasn't changed." Lewis understood what his mother meant, but it still hurt. Anthony Hamilton had been the most important person in Lewis's life. The idea that Anthony wasn't his biological father felt like losing something precious. "Does Anthony know about this?" Lewis asked. "Of course he knows," Carmen replied. "I told him everything before we got married. Anthony chose to raise you as his own son anyway. He never once treated you differently because of it." Lewis thought about all the sacrifices Anthony had made over the years. Working extra shifts to pay for racing equipment, driving Lewis to tracks all over England for karting races, believing in Lewis's talent when nobody else did. "Anthony is still my dad," Lewis said quietly. "Nothing changes that." "I know," Carmen said, smiling through her tears. "And Marcus knows that too. He's not trying to replace Anthony. He just wants to meet you before it's too late." Lewis took a deep breath. His whole world had just changed. But somehow Anthony Hamilton was still the most important father figure in his life. "Where is Marcus now?" Lewis asked. "He's at the hotel," Carmen said. "He didn't want to approach you without permission. He's been so nervous about this moment." Lewis imagined this stranger, his biological father, sitting alone in a hotel room, probably just as scared and confused as Lewis felt right now. "What's he like?" Lewis asked. Carmen smiled sadly. "He's a lot like you, actually. He used to race cars when he was young. Not Formula One, but smaller racing series in England. That's how we met, at a racetrack." So racing was in Lewis's blood from both sides of his family. That explained a lot about Lewis's natural talent and his deep love for motorsport. "He left us?" Lewis asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Carmen nodded. "He was young and scared when I told him I was pregnant. He thought he wasn't ready to be a father. So he left England and moved to Canada." "Canada?" "He got married there and had other children," Carmen explained. "You have half-siblings, Lewis. A brother and a sister you've never met." Lewis felt overwhelmed. In one conversation, he had learned he had a different biological father and siblings he didn't know existed. His family had suddenly become much bigger and much more complicated. "Are they here too?" Lewis asked. "They're at the hotel with Marcus," Carmen said. "They think they're just here to watch their first Formula One race. They don't know about you yet." Lewis imagined two strangers sitting in a hotel room, having no idea that Lewis Hamilton was their half-brother. "This is all so much," Lewis said, sitting down on a nearby chair. "I know," Carmen said, sitting next to him. "That's why Marcus wanted you to open the box first. He thought it might help explain things." Lewis stood up suddenly. "I need to see what's in that box. Right now." Together, Lewis and Carmen walked back toward the Mercedes garage. The paddock was getting quieter as teams began packing up after the race, but Lewis's mind was racing faster than ever. As they approached his driver's room, Lewis saw a familiar figure standing near the entrance. It was Marcus Thompson, the man from the crowd. Up close, the resemblance was even more striking. Marcus had Lewis's eyes, Lewis's smile, and Lewis's way of standing, but Marcus looked tired and thin, clearly affected by his illness. "Hello, Lewis," Marcus said quietly. "I'm Marcus Thompson." Lewis stared at this man who was apparently his biological father. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "I know this is confusing," Marcus continued. "I know you have every right to be angry with me, but I'm grateful for this chance to finally meet you." Lewis didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to hug this stranger. Part of him wanted to walk away and pretend this conversation had never happened. Can we talk?" Lewis asked finally. Marcus nodded. "That's all I've wanted for 38." As they walked toward Lewis's driver's room together, Lewis realized that opening the wooden box was no longer just about satisfying his curiosity. It was about understanding where he really came from and who his family really was. The truth was about to change everything, just like his mother had promised. Lewis sat in his small driver's room with the wooden box on the table in front of him. Marcus Thompson sat across from him in the only chair, while Carmen stood by the door. The room felt too small for such a big moment. Lewis's hands shook as he reached for the purple ribbon tied around the box. The fabric was soft and old, like it had been there for many years. "Take your time," Marcus said gently. "I know this is a lot to handle." Lewis untied the ribbon and set it aside. The wooden box felt even heavier now that he knew what it meant. This wasn't just a gift from his mother. This was a message from the father he never knew he had. The lid of the box creaked as Lewis opened it slowly. Inside, he could see 3 items carefully arranged: an old photograph, a sealed letter with his name written on it, and a small silver ring. Lewis picked up the photograph first. It showed a young black man in a white racing suit standing next to a small Formula car. The man looked exactly like Lewis when he was younger. The same eyes, the same confident smile, the same way of standing. "That's me in 1984, Marcus said quietly. "I was racing in the British Formula Ford Championship that year." Lewis stared at the photo. It was like looking at himself 20 years ago. The racing suit, the car, even the expression on the man's face reminded Lewis of his early days in motorsport. "You really were a racing driver," Lewis said. "Not a very successful one," Marcus replied with a sad smile. "But I loved it just as much as you do." Lewis set down the photograph and picked up the letter. His name was written on the envelope in careful handwriting. The paper felt old and delicate. "Should I read this now?" Lewis asked. Marcus nodded. "I wrote it 10 years ago, when I first found out I was sick. I always hoped your mother would give it to you someday." Lewis opened the envelope carefully and pulled out several pages of handwritten text. The first line made his heart stop beating for a moment. "My dear son Lewis, if you're reading this, then your mother has finally decided to tell you the truth about who I really am." Lewis took a deep breath and continued reading. "My name is Marcus Thompson, and I am your biological father. I know this must be shocking to learn, and I know you probably have many questions. I will try to answer them as honestly as I can. I was a racing driver when I met your mother in 1985. We were both young and crazy about motorsport. I was competing in the British Formula Ford Championship, and your mother was working as a timing official at Brands Hatch Circuit. The first time I saw Carmen, I knew she was special. She was the most beautiful and intelligent woman I had ever met. We fell in love quickly, the way young people do when they think the whole world belongs to them. But I was also selfish and scared. Racing was everything to me, and I thought having a family would end my dreams of becoming a professional driver. When your mother told me she was pregnant with you, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I ran away. I left England in 1985 and moved to Canada. I told myself I was too young to be a father, that I wasn't ready for the responsibility. But the truth is, I was just a coward. Your mother married Anthony Hamilton, and he became the father I should have been. Anthony deserves all the credit for making you the man you are today. He supported your racing dreams when I wasn't there to do it. He believed in you when you needed it most. I have watched every single one of your races since you started in Formula One. I have been so proud of you, but also so ashamed of myself. Every time you win a race, I feel joy and sadness at the same time. Joy because you are my son, and sadness because I had nothing to do with your success. The ring in this box belonged to my father, your grandfather. His name was James Thompson, and he was a mechanic who worked on racing cars in the 1960s. Racing is in your blood from both sides of your family, Lewis. You were born to do what you do. I am dying, Lewis. I have cancer, and the doctors say I have maybe 6 months left to live. That's why your mother decided it was time for you to know the truth. I don't expect you to forgive me or to want a relationship with me. I just wanted you to know that you have always been loved, even from far away. I got married in Canada and had 2 other children. You have a half-sister named Emma, who is 22 years old, and a half-brother named Jake, who is 25. They are both wonderful people, and they don't know about you yet. Emma races cars too, just like us. She has your talent and your determination. I never told them about you, because I was ashamed of leaving you behind. But now that I'm running out of time, I think they deserve to know they have a brother who became everything I dreamed of being. Lewis, I know I have no right to ask anything of you. But if you ever want to meet your half-siblings, they would be honored to know you. And if you never want to see me again after today, I will understand. Thank you for becoming the man you are, despite having a father who wasn't brave enough to stay. Thank you for making the Thompson name mean something in racing, even though you carry the Hamilton name instead. I am sorry for all the years I missed. I am sorry for not being there when you needed me. Most of all, I am sorry for being too scared to love you the way you deserved. Your father, Marcus Thompson. Lewis finished reading the letter and felt tears running down his cheeks. He had never cried in front of strangers before, but Marcus didn't feel like a stranger anymore. The letter explained so much about Lewis's life. His natural talent for racing, his deep love for motorsport, his ability to stay calm under pressure. These things came from both sides of his family. You really watched all my races? Lewis asked quietly. Marcus nodded. Every single one. I have recordings of them all. I have newspaper clippings of your victories. I've been your biggest fan from thousands of miles away. Lewis picked up the silver ring from the box. It was simple but beautiful, with small engravings around the band. Your grandfather James gave me this ring when I started racing, Marcus explained. He said it would bring me good luck on the track. I was wearing it the day I met your mother. Lewis held the ring up to the light. He could see tiny words engraved on the inside, JT to MT. Chase your dreams. James Thompson was my father, Marcus continued. He worked as a mechanic for racing teams in the 1960s. He always dreamed of having a son who could race professionally. So racing really is in my blood, Lewis said. 3 generations of it. Marcus replied. Your grandfather would have been so proud to see what you've accomplished. Lewis thought about Anthony Hamilton again. Anthony had supported Lewis's racing dreams without knowing that racing was part of Lewis's genetic heritage. Anthony had believed in Lewis's talent simply because he loved Lewis as his son. Anthony is still my real father, Lewis said firmly. I know, Marcus replied, and I'm grateful to him every day. He gave you the love and support I was too scared to provide. Carmen spoke for the first time in several minutes. Lewis, there's something else you should know. Marcus has been helping financially over the years. Lewis looked up in surprise. What do you mean? Some of the money for your early karting career came from Marcus, Carmen explained. He sent it through me anonymously. He couldn't be there in person, but he tried to help the only way he could. Lewis felt overwhelmed. This man had been part of his life in secret for years, supporting his racing dreams from thousands of miles away. Why didn't you ever try to contact me directly? Lewis asked. Marcus looked down at his hands. Because you were becoming everything I dreamed of being but never could. How do you tell the world's greatest racing driver that his biological father was too much of a coward to stick around? Lewis understood now why Marcus had waited so long. It wasn't just fear or shame. It was also respect for the life Lewis had built with Anthony and Carmen. I want to meet Emma and Jake, Lewis said suddenly. Marcus looked surprised. Are you sure? If I'm gonna have siblings, I want to know them, Lewis replied. Especially if you're… He couldn't say the word dying out loud. Marcus smiled for the first time since Lewis had met him. They're going to be so shocked. Emma especially. She's always wondered why I get so emotional watching Formula One races. Lewis realized that his family had just become much bigger and much more complicated. But instead of feeling scared, he felt curious. He wanted to know these people who shared his blood and his love for racing. Are they here in England? Lewis asked. Carmen pulled out her phone. Actually, they're at the hotel. I flew them here yesterday as a surprise. Emma thinks she's here to watch her first Formula One race. She has no idea she's about to meet her famous half-brother. Lewis felt his stomach flip with nervousness. Meeting Marcus had been shocking enough. Now he was about to meet 2 siblings he never knew existed. What are they like? Lewis asked. Marcus's tired face brightened when he talked about his other children. Emma is fearless, just like you were at her age. She's been racing go-karts since she was 8 years old. Last year, she moved up to Formula 4 in Canada. She's fast? Lewis asked. Very fast, Marcus replied with pride. She won 3 races this season. Her dream is to race in Formula One someday. Just like you. Lewis tried to imagine a 22-year-old woman who looked like him and raced like him. The idea felt surreal. And Jake? Lewis asked. Jake is quieter than Emma, Marcus explained. He's a mechanical engineer in Toronto. He loves cars but prefers to work on them rather than drive them. He's the one who keeps Emma's race cars running perfectly. Lewis realized that both of his half-siblings had followed different paths into the same world he lived in. Emma, as a driver, Jake as an engineer. Racing really was in their family's blood. Are you ready to meet them? Carmen asked gently. Lewis took a deep breath. I think so. But how do we explain this? They don't even know I exist. Marcus stood up slowly, clearly weakened by his illness. I'll tell them the truth. The same way I told you. They deserve to know they have a brother. Will they be angry? Lewis asked. Will they hate me for having the racing career Emma wants? They could never hate you, Marcus said firmly. Emma has been your fan since she started watching Formula One. She has posters of you in her bedroom back in Canada. The irony was almost too much for Lewis to handle. His half-sister was a fan of his racing, not knowing they were related. Emma had been cheering for her own brother without realizing it. 30 minutes later, Lewis stood outside room 415 at the Silverstone Hotel. Marcus, Carmen, and Lewis had driven there together in uncomfortable silence. Now they were about to change 2 more lives forever. Marcus knocked softly on the door. Emma? Jake? It's Dad. The door opened, and Lewis saw a young woman with curly hair and bright eyes. She was tall and athletic, with the same confident posture Lewis recognized in himself. This had to be Emma. "Dad, how was the race?" Emma asked excitedly. Then she noticed Lewis standing behind Marcus. Her mouth dropped open. "Oh my God, you're Lewis Hamilton." Lewis managed a nervous smile. "Huh, Dad, why didn't you tell me we were meeting Lewis Hamilton?" Emma turned to look at a young man who appeared behind her. This was clearly Jake. He had Marcus's eyes and Lewis's nose. "Because there's something we need to talk about first," Marcus said quietly. "Can we come in?" Emma stepped aside, still staring at Lewis in amazement. The hotel room was small but comfortable. 2 beds and a sitting area by the window. "Please, sit down," Marcus said to his children. "Both of you." Emma and Jake sat on one of the beds, looking confused. Lewis sat in a chair near the door, ready to leave if this went badly. "I need to tell you something I should have told you years ago," Marcus began. His voice was shaking. "It's about why I love Formula One so much. It's about why I get emotional watching Lewis Hamilton race." Emma looked back and forth between Marcus and Lewis. "Dad, what's going on?" Marcus took a deep breath. "Lewis Hamilton is your half-brother." The silence in the room was complete. Emma stared at Lewis. Jake stared at Marcus. Nobody moved for what felt like an hour. "That's impossible," Jake said finally. "Lewis Hamilton can't be our brother." "I know it sounds crazy," Marcus said, "but it's true. Before I moved to Canada, before I met your mother, I was in England. I was racing here, and I met a woman named Carmen." Emma's eyes were getting wider. "You mean—" "Lewis is my son," Marcus said. "Our son. I left England when Carmen was pregnant, and I never told you about him." Emma jumped up from the bed. "You're serious? Lewis Hamilton is actually our brother?" Lewis spoke for the first time since entering the room. "I found out today too. I'm just as surprised as you are." Emma sat back down heavily. "This is insane. I've been watching you race for years. I have your poster on my wall. You're my racing hero." "Emma races too," Jake said to Lewis. "She's really good. She might even be better than you were at her age." Lewis looked at Emma with new interest. "What kind of racing do you do?" "Formula 4 in Canada," Emma replied, still looking stunned. "I won 3 races this season. My goal is to make it to Formula 1 someday." "Now I understand why you're so fast," Lewis said with a smile. "It runs in the family." Emma started crying. Not sad tears, but overwhelmed tears. "I can't believe this. My brother is Lewis Hamilton. My actual brother." Jake was taking the news more quietly, but Lewis could see the shock on his face. "Dad, why didn't you tell us? Why keep this secret for so long?" Marcus sat down heavily in another chair. "Because I was ashamed. I abandoned Lewis when he was born. I didn't deserve to claim him as my son after Anthony Hamilton did all the hard work of raising him." "Anthony Hamilton?" Emma asked. "My stepfather," Lewis explained. "The man who raised me. He's my real father in every way that matters." Emma nodded, understanding. "But you still wanted to know about your biological family." "Yes," Lewis said. "Especially now that Marcus is—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Sick," Jake said quietly. "We know about the cancer, Dad. We're not stupid." Lewis realized that Emma and Jake had been dealing with their father's illness, while having no idea their half-brother was one of the most famous athletes in the world. "How long have you known about Lewis?" Emma asked Marcus. "I've known about him his whole life," Marcus replied. "I've watched every race, read every article, celebrated every victory from far away." "That's why you cry when he wins," Emma said, understanding finally dawning. "That's why you get so emotional during Formula 1 races." "I've been watching my son succeed at everything I dreamed of doing," Marcus said. "It makes me proud and heartbroken at the same time." Lewis felt a strange connection to this young woman and this quiet young man. They were strangers, but they weren't. They shared the same blood, the same love for racing, the same father who had made mistakes, but was trying to fix them. "What happens now?" Jake asked. "I don't know," Lewis answered honestly. "This is all new to me too." Emma looked directly at Lewis. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are you angry at Dad for leaving you?" Lewis thought about the question carefully. I was angry when I first found out, but now, I think I understand. He was young and scared. And honestly, my life turned out pretty well without him. Because of Anthony Hamilton, Emma said. Exactly. Anthony believed in me and supported my racing dreams. I wouldn't be here without him. Emma stood up and walked over to Louis. Can I hug my brother? Louis stood up and hugged Emma. She was tall and strong, clearly an athlete. It felt strange but also right to hug this person who was family but also a stranger. I can't believe I have a brother who races in Formula One, Emma said into his shoulder. I can't believe I have a sister who races at all. Louis replied. Jake joined the hug, and for a moment the three siblings stood together. Marcus watched from his chair with tears in his eyes. There's something else you should know, Marcus said quietly. Louis, Emma, and Jake all turned to look at him. Louis, your grandfather James Thompson wasn't just a mechanic. He was one of the most talented racing engineers of his generation. And there are things about our family's racing history that even I'm just learning. Emma sat back down. What do you mean? Marcus looked at Louis. There was more in that box than just my letter in the ring. Wasn't there? Louis nodded slowly. He had been so focused on meeting his siblings that he'd forgotten about the other secrets the wooden box might contain. What else was in there? Jake asked. Louis realized that his family's story was even more complicated than he'd thought, and they were just getting started, uncovering the truth. Back at Louis's hotel room, an hour later, the four of them sat around the small table. Louis had brought the wooden box from his driver's room at Silverstone. Now it sat in the center of the table like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Show them what else was in there, Marcus said weakly. The excitement of meeting his children together had tired him out. Louis opened the box again and carefully removed the photograph, the letter and the silver ring. But now he looked more closely at the box itself. I didn't notice this before, Louis said, running his fingers along the bottom. The wood feels different here. Emma leaned forward to look. As someone who worked with her hands fixing race cars, she understood how things were built. Dad, this box has a secret compartment. Louis pressed on the bottom of the box, and a small section slid away. Inside the hidden space was another letter and a small brass key. I never knew about that, Marcus said in surprise. My father gave me this box when I was 18, but I never found a secret compartment. Louis pulled out the second letter. This one was much older than Marcus's letter. The paper was yellow with age, and the handwriting was different. Dear Marcus, Louis read aloud, I am writing this in 1963, hoping you will read it when you're old enough to understand. Our family has a secret that goes back 3 generations. Emma's eyes widened. 3 generations? Louis continued reading. I am not just a mechanic who works on racing cars. I am an engineer who designs racing cars. I have created some of the most successful Formula One cars of the past 5 years, but I have never received credit for my work. Jake sat up straighter. Grandpa James designed Formula One cars? The racing world in the 1960s was not ready for a black chief engineer. Louis read on. So I work in secret, creating innovations that win championships for other people. The teams take my designs and pretend they came from their white engineers. Louis felt angry as he read these words. His grandfather had been brilliant enough to design winning Formula One cars, but he couldn't get credit because of the color of his skin. This is terrible, Emma said. Grandpa should have been famous. Marcus was learning this information for the first time too. My father never told me any of this. I thought he was just a mechanic who worked in the garages. Louis kept reading. I have been the secret chief engineer for Team Lotus since 1961. The car that Jim Clark drives to victory, I designed the suspension, the aerodynamics, and the engine modifications. But only Colin Chapman knows the truth. Jim Clark? Jake said. Wasn't he one of the greatest Formula One drivers ever? One of the best, Louis confirmed. He won 2 world championships in the 19... The letter continued. I hold patents for 14 different racing innovations, but they are all filed under false names. The racing establishment would never accept these ideas if they knew they came from a black man. Louis felt a strange pride and sadness at the same time. His grandfather had been a genius, but he'd been forced to hide his brilliance. Marcus, the key in this box opens a safety deposit box at Barclays Bank in London. Louis read. Inside you will find all my original racing designs and proof of my innovations. Someday, when the world is ready, I hope our family will get the recognition we deserve." Emma reached across the table and picked up the small brass key. "This opens a bank vault." "Apparently," Louis said. Grandpa hid all his racing designs in a safety deposit box. Marcus looked confused. But that was 60 years ago. Wouldn't the bank have closed the account by now? Louis read the final part of the letter. "I have arranged for the annual fees to be paid automatically from a trust fund. This box will stay safe for 50 years, waiting for my family to claim it. I hope my son Marcus will use these designs to become the racing driver I could never be. And if Marcus has children, maybe they will finish what I started." The room was quiet as everyone absorbed this information. James Thompson had been planning for his family's racing future decades before any of them were born. "He wanted you to be a racing driver, Dad," Emma said to Marcus. "That's why he saved all those designs." Marcus looked sad. "Instead, I ran away from racing and abandoned my son. I failed him completely." "You didn't fail," Louis said firmly. "You made mistakes, but you didn't fail. Look at Emma. She's carrying on the family racing tradition, and I ended up in Formula One anyway." Emma picked up the brass key and turned it over in her hands. "Huh. We have to go to that bank. We have to see what Grandpa James left for us." "Are you sure?" Marcus asked. "Opening that box might change everything. People will want to know where these designs came from. It might bring attention to our whole family story." Louis understood what Marcus meant. If they revealed that James Thompson had designed championship-winning Formula One cars, reporters would want to know about James's family. They would discover that Lewis Hamilton was James Thompson's grandson. "I don't care about the media attention," Louis said. "I care about Grandpa getting the recognition he deserved." Jake agreed. "If Grandpa James designed cars that won races, people should know about it. It's not fair that he had to work in secret." Emma was already standing up, eager to take action. "When can we go to the bank?" Marcus struggled to get up from his chair. The cancer was making him weaker every hour. "We should go tomorrow morning. I want to see my father's work before—" He didn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood. Marcus was running out of time. Louis helped Marcus sit back down. "Are you strong enough for this? We don't have to rush. I've been waiting my whole life to understand my father," Marcus said. "I'm not gonna waste any more time." Carmen, who had been quiet during most of this conversation, finally spoke up. "There's something else you should know. James Thompson didn't just design cars. He also discovered something that could change modern Formula One." Louis looked at his mother in surprise. "What do you mean?" "James left some of his research notes with me years ago," Carmen explained. "He was working on engine technology that was decades ahead of its time. Hybrid engines that combine electric power with traditional fuel." Emma's mouth dropped open. "Hybrid engines? Like the ones Formula One uses now?" "Exactly like that," Carmen said. "But James was designing them in the 1980s, almost 40 years before Formula One actually started using hybrid power." Louis felt amazed and proud. His grandfather hadn't just been a great engineer. He had been a visionary who could see the future of racing before anyone else. "Where are these research notes now?" Jake asked. "Probably in that safety deposit box," Carmen replied, "along with all his other work." Louis realized that tomorrow they might discover innovations that could change Formula One forever. His grandfather's hidden genius might finally be revealed to the world. But there was something else bothering Louis. Something that didn't make sense. "Mom," Louis said slowly, "how do you know so much about James Thompson's work? You never met him. He died before I was born." Carmen looked uncomfortable. "Well, actually," Marcus stared at his ex-girlfriend. "Carmen, what aren't you telling us?" Carmen took a deep breath. "James Thompson didn't die in 1987 like we thought. He died in 1995. And before he died, he contacted me." The room went silent again. Every time they thought they knew the whole truth, another secret appeared. "What do you mean he contacted you?" Louis asked. "He wanted to make sure you knew about your racing heritage," Carmen explained. "James had been following your karting career. He knew you had the talent to make it to Formula One." Emma leaned forward. "Wait, you're saying our grandfather knew about Louis's racing career?" Carmen nodded. James Thompson was very proud of his grandson. He left specific instructions about when Louis should learn about the family's racing history. Louis felt overwhelmed. His grandfather, who he'd never met, had been watching his career and planning for this moment. "There's more, isn't there?" Lewis asked quietly. Carmen pulled out an envelope from her purse. "James left this for you specifically. I was supposed to give it to you when you won your first Formula One race, but I thought you weren't ready to learn about Marcus yet." Lewis took the envelope with shaking hands. It was addressed to Lewis Hamilton, Formula One racing driver. How could he know I would become a Formula One driver when I was just a kid? Lewis asked. Marcus smiled weakly. "Because racing talent like yours doesn't come along very often." And James Thompson knew racing better than anyone. As Lewis held his grandfather's final letter, he realized that his family's racing legacy was much deeper and more important than he had ever imagined. Tomorrow, they would open that safety deposit box and discover secrets that had been hidden for 60 years. But tonight, Lewis couldn't help wondering what other surprises his family still had in store for him. The next morning, Lewis woke up early in his hotel room. He had barely slept, thinking about everything he had learned in the past 24 hours. His whole life had changed, but somehow he felt more complete than he had ever felt before. Lewis looked at his phone. It was 7:30 a.m. on July 3rd, 2023. In a few hours, he would go to Barclays Bank in London with his newfound family to open a safety deposit box that had been waiting for 60 years. But first, Lewis needed to call Anthony Hamilton. Anthony answered on the second ring. "Lewis, congratulations on the podium yesterday. I'm so proud of you, son." Lewis felt emotional hearing Anthony call him son. After everything he had learned, Anthony was still the most important father figure in his life. "Anthony, I need to tell you something important," Lewis said. "Can you sit down? Is everything okay? You sound serious." Lewis took a deep breath. "Marcus Thompson contacted Mum. I met him yesterday." There was a long pause on the phone. "I see," Anthony said quietly. "How do you feel about that?" "Confused, sad, but also curious," Lewis answered honestly. "Anthony, you're still my real father. Nothing changes that." "I know," Anthony said gently. "I've always known this day might come. Marcus has every right to meet his son." Lewis felt grateful for Anthony's understanding. Not every stepfather would be so generous about sharing their child with a biological father. "There's more," Lewis continued. "Marcus is dying. He has cancer. And I have 2 half-siblings I never knew about." Anthony was quiet for a moment. "That's a lot to handle, Lewis." "How can I help?" "Just by being you," Lewis said. "Just by being the father who raised me and believed in me. Always." Anthony replied. "And Lewis, if Marcus needs anything at all, you tell him we'll help. He's family now, too." Lewis felt tears in his eyes. Anthony Hamilton was the most generous man he had ever known. After ending the call, Lewis met Marcus, Emma, Jake, and Carmen in the hotel lobby. Marcus looked weaker than he had the day before, but he was determined to make the trip to London. "Are you sure you're strong enough for this?" Lewis asked. "I've been waiting my whole life to understand my father," Marcus replied. "I'm not missing this chance." Emma helped her father into Lewis's Mercedes, while Jake sat in the front passenger seat. Carmen followed in her own car. As they drove toward London, Lewis couldn't help but notice how much Emma looked like him when she concentrated. "Dad told me you started racing when you were 8, Lewis said to Emma. "Yeah, go-karts," Emma replied. "I was the only girl at most races, but I didn't care. I just wanted to be fast." "What's your goal?" Lewis asked. Emma looked directly at him. "Formula One. I want to be the first woman to win a Formula One race." Lewis admired her confidence. "It won't be easy. There's a lot of prejudice in racing." "I know," Emma said, "but look at you. You became world champion despite all the obstacles. If my brother can do it, so can I." Hearing Emma call him brother still felt strange and wonderful to Lewis. Jake spoke up from the front seat. "Emma's fast, but she's also stubborn. She never gives up on anything." "Sounds familiar," Lewis said with a smile. They arrived at Barclays Bank in central London at 10 a.m. The building was old and impressive, thick stone walls and tall windows. Lewis had driven past it many times, but never imagined he had family history waiting inside. The bank manager, Mrs. Patricia Wells, met them in the lobby. She was an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. "Mr. Hamilton, Mr. Thompson," she said formally, We don't often have celebrities visiting our safety deposit boxes. This is a family matter. Lewis explained. We're here to access box number. Mrs. Wells checked her computer. Yes, box 2047. It's been here since 1963. The annual fees have been paid automatically all these years, but nobody has accessed it in 60 years. She led them down to the basement vault, where rows of safety deposit boxes lined the walls. The vault felt like a library, quiet and full of hidden secrets. Here we are, Mrs. Wells said, stopping at a small metal door marked 247. Do you have the key? Emma handed Lewis the brass key they had found in the wooden box. Lewis's hands were shaking as he inserted it into the lock. The box opened with a click that echoed through the quiet vault. Inside, Lewis found folders full of papers, blueprints, and photographs. There were detailed technical drawings that look incredibly advanced for the... These are racing car designs, Jake said, examining the blueprints with his engineering knowledge. But they look more modern than anything from that era. Lewis found a folder labeled Jim Clark Lotus 25 Championship Car 1963. Inside were detailed notes about modifications James Thompson had made to the car that won the World Championship. Grandpa really did design championship-winning cars, Emma said in amazement. Marcus looked through another folder. Look at this, he said weakly. These are patent applications. Father filed patents for suspension systems, aerodynamic improvements, and engine modifications. Lewis found 14 different patent documents, all filed under the name JT Racing Enterprises instead of James Thompson's real name. He couldn't even use his own name on his patents, Lewis said angrily. The racing world robbed him of recognition for his own inventions. At the bottom of the box, Lewis found a thick leather journal. On the cover, someone had written Racing Innovations 1960-1987 in careful handwriting. Lewis opened the journal and found page after page of technical notes, drawings, and ideas. Some of the concepts looked incredibly advanced, even by modern standards. This is amazing, Jake said, reading over Lewis's shoulder. Grandpa was thinking about things that Formula One didn't adopt until Emma found a section about aerodynamics. Look at these wing designs. They're so much more sophisticated than what cars were using in the 1960s. Lewis flipped through the journal and found a section labeled Future Racing Technologies. His grandfather had written detailed notes about hybrid engines, energy recovery systems, and environmental sustainability in motorsport. He predicted everything, Lewis said in wonder. Hybrid engines, energy recovery, even biofuels. Grandpa saw the future of racing 40 years before it happened. Marcus was getting tired from standing, so Mrs. Wells brought him a chair. But his eyes were bright with excitement as he looked through his father's work. I never knew he was this brilliant, Marcus said. I thought he was just a mechanic who loved racing. But he was a visionary. At the very back of the journal, Lewis found a section written specifically for him. The heading said, For my grandson Lewis Hamilton, future Formula One driver. Lewis read the section out loud. If you are reading this, then you have achieved what I always believed you would achieve. You have reached Formula One, and I hope you have found success there. Emma wiped tears from her eyes as Lewis continued reading. You carry the racing genes of 3 generations of Thompson men. Your natural talent comes from your bloodline, but your success comes from your own hard work and determination. Lewis felt a deep connection to this grandfather he had never met. James Thompson had believed in Lewis's potential before Lewis was even born. I have left you more than just technical drawings and patent documents, Lewis read on. I have left you proof that our family belongs in racing at the highest level. You are not just a talented driver who got lucky. You are the heir to a racing legacy that goes back decades. The journal continued. If the time ever comes when you want to share our family's story with the world, use these documents as proof. Show them that Black engineers and innovators have been contributing to racing success long before the sport was ready to give us credit. Lewis looked around at his family, Marcus growing weaker by the hour, Emma dreaming of following in Lewis's footsteps, Jake quietly proud of their grandfather's brilliance. Grandpa left us more than just technical documents, Lewis said. He left us a responsibility. What do you mean? Emma asked. He wants us to make sure the world knows that our family, that Black engineers and innovators have always been part of racing success, even when we weren't getting credit for it. Marcus nodded slowly. Your grandfather spent his whole life working in secret. Maybe it's time for the Thompson name to finally get recognition. Mrs. Wells had been quietly watching this family reunion. "There's something else," she said. "Mr. James Thompson left specific instructions that if his family ever came to claim this box, we should give you this." She handed Louis a sealed envelope marked "Final Instructions." Louis opened it and found a modern business card inside. The card belonged to Bernie Ecclestone, the former boss of Formula One. On the back of the card, someone had written in James Thompson's handwriting, "Bernie knows the truth about our family's contributions to racing. Ask him to tell the full story." Louis stared at the business card. Bernie Ecclestone had run Formula One for decades. If anyone knew the secret history of the sport, it would be him. "We need to call Bernie," Louis said. Emma looked excited. "You mean Bernie Ecclestone? The Formula One boss?" "Former boss," Louis corrected. "But yes, if Grandpa left his business card, there's a reason." Marcus struggled to stand up. "Louis, I don't know how much time I have left. If we're going to do this, if we're going to tell our family's story, we need to do it soon." Louis looked at his biological father, who was clearly getting sicker by the hour. Then he looked at Emma, who dreamed of racing in Formula One. Finally, he looked at Jake, who understood the engineering brilliance they had just discovered. "Then let's call Bernie now," Louis said. "It's time for the world to know the truth about the Thompson family racing legacy." But as Louis pulled out his phone to make the call, he wondered if they were ready for how much their lives would change once this secret became public. Some truths, once revealed, could never be taken back. Louis stood in the quiet bank vault, holding Bernie Ecclestone's business card in one hand and his phone in the other. Around him, his newfound family waited nervously as he prepared to make the most important phone call of his life. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked weakly. He was sitting in the chair Mrs. Wells had brought, looking pale and tired. "Grandpa left Bernie's card for a reason," Louis replied. "He wanted us to call him." Emma stepped closer to Louis. "What if Bernie doesn't want to help? What if he wants to keep Grandpa's story secret? Then we'll find another way," Louis said firmly. "But I think Bernie will help. He's always been honest about Formula One history." Louis dialed the number on the business card. His heart was beating fast as the phone rang. "Bernie Ecclestone speaking," came a familiar voice. "Bernie, it's Lewis Hamilton. I need to ask you about something very important." "Louis, how are you? Great race yesterday at Silverstone. Third place isn't bad for that Mercedes car." "Thank you, Bernie. I'm calling about my grandfather. His name was James Thompson. He worked in racing in the 90s. There was a long pause on the phone. Louis could hear Bernie breathing, but he wasn't saying anything. "Bernie, are you there?" "Louis," Bernie said quietly. "Where did you hear that name?" "He was my grandfather. I just found out yesterday." Another pause. "Louis, this isn't a conversation for the phone. Can you come see me today?" "Is it that serious?" "Your grandfather James was one of the most important people in Formula One history," Bernie said. "But almost nobody knows it. If you're his grandson, then yes. It's very serious." Louis felt his stomach flip. "We're in London now. At Barclays Bank, we just found his racing designs." "You found the safety deposit box?" Bernie sounded amazed. "James told me about that box 40 years ago, but I never thought anyone would find it." "Can we meet today?" Louis asked. "Come to my office in 2 hours. And Louis, bring everything you found. It's time someone heard the full story." Louis hung up the phone and looked at his family. "Bernie wants to see us. He says Grandpa was one of the most important people in Formula One history." Jake's eyes widened. "More important than we thought?" "It sounds like it," Louis replied. Mrs. Wells helped them pack all of James Thompson's documents into boxes. There were so many papers that they needed 3 large boxes to carry everything. "Mr. Hamilton," Mrs. Wells said as they prepared to leave. "In 30 years of working at this bank, I've never seen anything like this. Your grandfather must have been a remarkable man." "He was," Louis said, though he was still learning just how remarkable. 2 hours later, Louis and his family sat in Bernie Ecclestone's office in central London. Bernie was 94 years old now, but his mind was still sharp. His office was filled with Formula One trophies, photographs and memorabilia from 60 years in motorsport. "So you're James Thompson's grandson," Bernie said, looking at Louis with new interest. "That explains a lot about your racing ability." "What do you mean?" Louis asked. Bernie walked over to a filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. "I've been keeping this for 40 years, waiting for someone from James's family to come looking for answers." Bernie opened the folder and spread photographs across his desk. Louis saw pictures of his grandfather working on racing cars, talking to famous drivers, and standing next to Bernie himself. "Your grandfather James was not just a mechanic," Bernie began. "He was the secret chief engineer for Team Lotus from 1961 to 1967. The cars that won championships for Jim Clark? James designed them." Emma leaned forward to look at the photographs. "You're saying our grandfather designed championship-winning Formula One cars?" "Not just designed them," Bernie replied. "He revolutionized them. James Thompson created innovations that are still used in Formula One today." Bernie showed them technical drawings in James's handwriting. "This suspension system, James invented it in 1962. This aerodynamic wing design, James created it in 1965, 3 years before anyone else thought of it." Marcus struggled to speak. Why didn't he get credit? Why was it kept secret? Bernie's face became sad. Because Formula One in the 1960s was not ready for a black chief engineer. The sponsors, the media, even some of the drivers would not have accepted it. Louis felt angry hearing this, but he wasn't surprised. He had faced racism throughout his own career, even in modern Formula One. "So you and Colin Chapman kept Grandpa's contribution secret?" Louis asked. "Colin and I tried to give James credit," Bernie said. "We wanted to announce him as chief engineer. But James refused." "He refused?" Jake asked in surprise. Bernie nodded. "James was more interested in feeding his family than fighting for recognition. He took the money and stayed quiet. But he made us promise that someday, when the world was ready, we would tell the truth about his contributions." Bernie pulled out another photograph showing James Thompson standing with Jim Clark and Colin Chapman. All three men were smiling. But there was also sadness in their eyes. "This was taken after Jim Clark won the 1963 World Championship," Bernie explained. "James had designed most of the innovations that made that car so fast. But only the three of us knew it." Louis studied the photograph of his grandfather. James Thompson looked proud, but also frustrated, like a man who knew he deserved more recognition than he would ever receive. "What happened to Grandpa after 1967? Emma asked. "He kept working for various teams as a consultant," Bernie replied. "But really he was still designing cars and solving technical problems. James was involved in almost every major innovation in Formula One through the 90s. Bernie showed them more documents. Patent applications, technical drawings, and design notes, all bearing James Thompson's fingerprints. But not his public credit. "Your grandfather predicted the future of racing," Bernie continued. "In 1975, he was already designing hybrid engines. In 1980, he was working on energy recovery systems. James was thinking about environmental sustainability in motorsport 20 years before anyone else." Louis looked through his grandfather's designs with new appreciation. These weren't just the work of a talented engineer. They were the work of a visionary who could see decades into the future. "Bernie," Louis said, "why are you telling us this now? You could have kept it secret forever." Bernie smiled. "Because your grandfather made me promise something. He said if any of his descendants ever made it to Formula One, I should tell them the truth about the Thompson family racing legacy." "He knew I would make it to Formula One?" Louis asked. "James was following your karting career in the 1990s, Bernie replied. "He called me when you were 12 years old and said, 'That's the one, Bernie. That's the Thompson who will make it to Formula One.'" Louis felt amazed. His grandfather had been watching his career and predicting his success when Louis was just a child. "There's something else," Bernie said, pulling out a sealed envelope. "James left this for you specifically. He said I should give it to you when you were ready to learn about your family's racing heritage." Louis opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter written in his grandfather's careful handwriting. "My dear grandson Louis, if Bernie is giving you this letter, then you have achieved something I always knew you would achieve. You have reached Formula One and proven that the Thompson family belongs at the highest level of motorsport. I have watched your career from the shadows, just as I worked in the shadows for my entire life. But you don't have to work in shadows. You can take credit for your achievements and your family's contributions to racing. I am giving you a choice, Louis. You can keep our family's racing legacy secret, as I did. Or you can share our story with the world and help other young Black engineers and drivers know that they belong in this sport. The decision is yours, but I hope you will be braver than I was. I hope you will tell the truth that I was too scared to tell. Your proud grandfather, James Thompson. Lewis finished reading and looked around at his family. Marcus was crying quietly. Emma and Jake were staring at the letter in amazement. Grandpa wants us to go public with this story, Lewis said. But that means telling the world about Dad, Emma said, looking at Marcus. About how he left you and came back. Marcus nodded weakly. If sharing our family story helps other people, then I don't care what the media says about me. I've made my mistakes. Now it's time to do something right. Bernie leaned back in his chair. Lewis, if you decide to share this story, it will change Formula One history. People will finally know that Black engineers and innovators have been contributing to racing success for decades. Lewis thought about all the young Black kids who dreamed of working in motorsport but didn't think they belonged. His grandfather's story could inspire them to pursue their dreams. There's just one problem, Bernie said. James wasn't the only one who worked in secret. There are other families with similar stories. If you open this door, you'll open it for everyone. Lewis realized that his decision would affect more than just his own family. It could change how the world understood the history of Formula One. What do you think we should do? Lewis asked his family. Marcus struggled to stand up. Lewis, I'm dying. After I'm gone, this story belongs to you, Emma, and Jake. You decide what's right. Emma looked determined. I think we should tell the truth. Grandpa deserves recognition, and other people deserve to know that they belong in racing too. Jake agreed. The world should know what our family contributed to this sport. Lewis made his decision. Bernie, help us tell Grandpa's story. Help us make sure the world knows the truth about James Thompson and all the other hidden contributors to Formula One. But as Lewis committed to revealing his family's secret, he wondered if he was prepared for how much his life would change once the story became public. Some doors, once opened, could never be closed again. Back at the hotel that evening, Lewis sat with his family around the small table in Marcus's room. The boxes of James Thompson's racing documents were stacked on the floor beside them. Bernie Ecclestone had given them copies of everything, along with his promise to help tell their story to the world. But now Lewis was having second thoughts. Are we sure about this? Lewis asked quietly. Once we go public, everything changes. The media will want to know about all of us. Marcus was lying on the bed, too weak to sit up for long periods. But his voice was clear when he spoke. Lewis, what are you worried about? I'm worried about you, Lewis replied honestly. The media will want to know why you left me. They'll ask hard questions about your choices. Marcus managed a weak smile. Son, I'm dying. What can the media do to me that cancer isn't already doing? Emma was sitting cross-legged on the floor, reading through their grandfather's journal. Lewis, look at this, she said, pointing to a page. Grandpa wrote about you specifically. Lewis leaned over to read the entry Emma had found. It was dated December 1995, when Lewis was only 10 years old. I watched Lewis race go-karts today at Rye House. The boy has something special. He doesn't just drive the kart, he becomes part of it. This child will reach Formula One, and when he does, the Thompson name will finally get recognition in racing. He was watching me race when I was 10. Lewis asked in amazement. Carmen nodded from her chair by the window. James came to several of your karting races. He always stayed far away so you wouldn't notice him. But he was there. Jake looked up from his own reading. There's more. Look at this entry from... Lewis read aloud. Lewis won again today. Anthony Hamilton is doing a wonderful job raising the boy. I made the right choice staying away. Lewis has the father he needs. But I hope someday he'll know that racing is in his Thompson blood too. Lewis felt emotional reading his grandfather's words. James Thompson had sacrificed his own desire to know Lewis in order to protect the stable family life Anthony and Carmen had created. Grandpa was thinking about our whole family, Lewis said. Not just himself. Marcus struggled to sit up on the bed. That's exactly why we need to tell this story. Your grandfather spent his whole life putting other people first. He put racing innovation first. Even when he didn't get credit, he put your happiness first. Even when it meant staying away. Emma closed the journal and looked at Lewis. Brother, I've been thinking about this all day. If we don't tell Grandpa's story, who will? What do you mean? Louis asked. All the people who knew the truth are getting old, Emma explained. Bernie is 94, Dad is dying. If we wait much longer, the story might be lost forever. Jake agreed with his sister. Plus, think about all the young black engineers and drivers who don't know they belong in racing. Grandpa's story could inspire them. Louis understood their points, but he was still worried. Once we do this, our family will never be private again. Emma, you want to race in Formula One someday? The media will follow you everywhere, asking about our family story. Emma shrugged. Good. Maybe that attention will help me get opportunities. Maybe teams will notice me because of the family connection. Or maybe they'll say you only got chances because of me, Louis warned. Then I'll prove them wrong on the track, Emma said firmly. Just like you proved everyone wrong. Louis admired his sister's confidence. She reminded him of himself at her age, determined to succeed no matter what obstacles appeared. Carmen spoke up from her chair. Louis, there's something else you should consider. Your grandfather's racing innovations could still help modern Formula One. What do you mean? Louis asked. Carmen opened one of the boxes and pulled out a folder labeled Future Technologies, Confidential. Inside were designs for racing technologies that looked incredibly advanced. James was working on these ideas right up until he died in 1995, Carmen explained. Some of these concepts still haven't been used in Formula One. Jake examined the technical drawings with his engineering background. This is incredible. Grandpa designed a fuel system that could reduce emissions by 40%. And look at this, an aerodynamic system that automatically adjusts to track conditions. Louis looked at the designs with new appreciation. These innovations could help Formula One become more environmentally friendly. Exactly. Marcus said from the bed, your grandfather's final gift to racing isn't just his story. It's his vision for making the sport better. Emma stood up and walked to the window, overlooking London. Louis, imagine if a young black girl sees our story on the news. Imagine if she learns that our family has been contributing to racing for 60 years. Maybe that girl decides to become an engineer or a driver because she knows she belongs. Louis thought about Emma's words. His own success had inspired many young drivers, but his grandfather's story could inspire engineers, designers, and innovators too. There's something else, Jake said quietly. Dad might not have much time left. If we're going to do this, we should do it while he can see the results. Louis looked at Marcus, who was clearly getting weaker every day. The cancer was advancing quickly, and Marcus might only have weeks left to live. What do you want, Marcus? Louis asked his biological father. Really? Marcus took a shaky breath. I want to be proud of something before I die. I've made so many mistakes in my life. I left you. I kept family secrets. I wasted years being afraid. Marcus paused to gather strength. But if we tell your grandfather's story, if we help other people understand that they belong in racing, then maybe I can do one thing right. Louis felt his resistance melting away. This wasn't just about his grandfather's legacy anymore. It was about Marcus finding redemption and Emma finding inspiration. How would we tell the story? Louis asked. Through the media? Carmen pulled out her phone. Bernie suggested we work with a documentary filmmaker. Someone who can tell the story properly with all the historical context. A documentary would let us control the narrative, Jake agreed. We could make sure Grandpa's technical contributions get proper explanation. Emma sat back down with excitement. And we could include footage of me racing, to show that the Thompson Racing legacy continues. Louis realized that his family had already thought through most of the practical details. They weren't just asking him to reveal a secret, they were asking him to help create something meaningful. What about Anthony? Louis asked. How do we make sure the documentary shows that he's my real father? That's easy, Marcus said, because it's true. Anthony Hamilton raised you and supported your career. That makes him your father in every way that matters. Carmen nodded. The documentary will make it clear that Anthony is the hero of your story. Louis, Marcus is just the biological connection to your racing heritage. Louis thought about Anthony, who had worked multiple jobs to pay for Louis's karting career. Anthony deserved credit for everything Louis had achieved. If we do this documentary, Anthony gets honored properly. Louis said firmly. He's the most important person in my story. Agreed, Marcus said immediately. Anthony deserves all the credit for making you the man you are. Louis looked around at his newfound family. Marcus lying weakly on the bed but still determined to do something meaningful. Emma full of dreams and determination. Jake quiet but supportive. Carmen, who had kept family secrets for decades, but was now ready to reveal them. "Okay," Lewis said finally, "let's tell Grandpa's story. Let's make sure the world knows that James Thompson was one of the most important innovators in Formula One history." Emma jumped up and hugged Lewis. "Really? We're gonna do this?" "We're going to do this," Lewis confirmed. "But we do it right. We honor Grandpa's memory. We respect Anthony's role in my life. And we help inspire other people who think they don't belong in racing." Marcus smiled from the bed. "Your grandfather would be so proud of this decision." Over the next hour, they made plans for the documentary. Bernie Ecclestone would provide historical footage in Tocantins. Lewis would use his Formula One connections to get access to current teams and drivers. Emma and Jake would represent the next generation of the Thompson racing legacy. "What should we call it?" Emma asked. Lewis thought for a moment. "How about Hidden Champions? The secret history of racing innovation." "Perfect," Jake said. "It's about Grandpa's story, but also about all the other hidden contributors to racing." As they finalized their plans, Lewis felt excited rather than nervous. This wasn't just about revealing family secrets anymore. It was about changing how people understood the history of Formula One. But as Lewis looked at Marcus getting weaker by the hour, he realized they needed to work quickly. This might be their only chance to tell their grandfather's story with Marcus's help. "When do we start filming?" Lewis asked. Carmen checked her phone. "Bernie is setting up meetings with documentary producers tomorrow. If we move fast, we could start filming next week." "Next week might be too late," Emma said quietly, looking at her father. Marcus heard her concern. "Then we start tomorrow," he said firmly. "I'm not leaving this world without helping tell my father's story." Lewis realized that they weren't just racing against time to tell their grandfather's story. They were racing against time to help Marcus find peace before he died. Some truths were worth revealing, no matter what the consequences might be. The next morning, July 4th, Lewis woke up to his phone ringing. It was Maya Chen, his assistant. "Lewis, I'm sorry to call so early, but there's been a situation," Maya said, her voice tense. Lewis sat up in bed. "What kind of situation?" "Someone leaked photos of you at the bank yesterday. The media is asking questions about why you were at Barclays with people they don't recognize." Lewis felt his stomach drop. "What photos?" "A security camera caught you entering the bank vault with Marcus, Emma, and Jake. The photos are blurry, but people are starting to ask who these people are and why you were accessing a safety deposit box." Lewis realized their family secret might be revealed before they were ready to share it. "How bad is it?" Lewis asked. Sky Sports is running a story this morning titled "Lewis Hamilton's Mystery Bank Visit." They're speculating about everything from financial problems to secret business deals. Lewis got dressed quickly and called Marcus's room. Emma answered the phone. "Emma, we have a problem," Lewis said. "The media knows about our bank visit yesterday." "How much do they know?" Emma asked. "Not much yet, but they're asking questions. We need to decide what to do." An hour later, the whole family gathered in Bernie Ecclestone's office. Bernie had seen the news coverage and called them in for an emergency meeting. "This changes our timeline," Bernie said seriously. "You can either control this story or let the media control it for you." Marcus was sitting in a wheelchair now, too weak to walk far. But his mind was still sharp. "What are our options?" "Option 1. We deny everything and hope the story goes away," Bernie explained. "But that probably won't work. The media will keep digging." "Option 2? Lewis asked. "We tell the story ourselves, today. We call a press conference and reveal everything about James Thompson and your family history." Emma looked nervous. "Today? Are we ready for that?" Bernie pulled out his phone. "I've already spoken with 3 major news organizations. They're all interested in an exclusive interview about the Thompson family racing legacy." Jake examined the media coverage on his phone. The speculation is getting wild. Some people think Lewis is in financial trouble. Others think he's starting a new racing team. Lewis realized they were losing control of their own story. If we don't speak up soon, people will make up their own version of the truth. Carmen spoke up. James wouldn't have wanted wild speculation about his family. He always preferred truth to rumors. Marcus struggled to speak from his wheelchair. Lewis, I know this isn't how we planned it, but maybe this is a sign that it's time. Time for what? Lewis asked. Time to stop being afraid of the truth, Marcus replied. Your grandfather hid his brilliance for 60 years. I hid from you for 38 years. Maybe it's time for our family to stop hiding. Lewis looked around the room at his family. Despite the pressure, they all seemed ready to face whatever came next. Bernie, if we do a press conference today, can you help us tell the story properly? Lewis asked. I can do better than that, Bernie replied. I can provide documentary evidence, photographs, and technical proof of everything James Thompson accomplished. Emma stood up from her chair. Lewis, I want to do this. I want the world to know that our grandfather was a genius. Jake agreed. The truth about Grandpa's innovations could help modern Formula One become more advanced and more environmentally friendly. Lewis made his decision. Let's call the press conference. Let's tell Grandpa's story the right way. Bernie immediately started making phone calls to arrange media coverage. Within 2 hours, they had set up a press conference for that afternoon at the Formula One headquarters in London. But as they prepared for the press conference, Lewis noticed that Marcus was getting much weaker. The excitement and stress of the past few days was taking a toll on his already fragile health. Marcus, are you strong enough for this? Lewis asked with concern. I have to be, Marcus replied. This might be my last chance to do something meaningful. At 3 p.m., Lewis walked into a room full of journalists, cameras, and Formula One officials. Bernie Ecclestone sat beside him, along with Marcus in his wheelchair. Emma, Jake, and Carmen. The room buzzed with curiosity. Nobody knew what this press conference was about, but Lewis Hamilton calling an emergency media event always attracted attention. Thank you all for coming, Lewis began. I called this press conference to share a story that has been hidden for 60 years. It's the story of my grandfather, James Thompson, and his contributions to Formula One. Lewis paused as cameras flashed and reporters leaned forward. James Thompson was not just a mechanic, as some records show. He was one of the most innovative engineers in Formula One history. He designed championship-winning cars, created technologies that are still used today, and predicted the future of racing decades before it happened. A reporter from Sky Sports raised her hand. Lewis, why is this story coming out now? Lewis gestured to Marcus. Because my biological father, Marcus Thompson, is dying. And before he passes away, our family wants to make sure my grandfather gets the recognition he deserved. The room erupted with surprised murmurs. Lewis Hamilton had just revealed that Anthony Hamilton was not his biological father. Marcus Thompson left me when I was born, Lewis continued. Anthony Hamilton raised me and supported my racing career. Anthony is my father in every way that matters. But Marcus is my biological connection to a racing legacy that goes back 3 generations. Bernie Ecclestone stood up and addressed the room. I can confirm everything Lewis is saying. James Thompson was the secret chief engineer for Team Lotus from 1961 to 1967. He designed the innovations that helped Jim Clark win 2 world championships. Bernie displayed technical drawings and photographs on a large screen. These are James Thompson's original designs. You can see his handwriting, his signature, and his revolutionary ideas. A reporter from the BBC asked, why was this kept secret? Because Formula One in the 1960s was not ready for a black chief engineer. Bernie replied honestly. James Thompson was brilliant, but the sport was not ready to give him public credit. Emma spoke for the first time. My grandfather's story shows that black engineers and innovators have been kidnapping to racing success for decades, even when they couldn't get recognition. Who are you? Asked a journalist. I'm Emma Thompson, Lewis's half-sister. I race in Formula 4 in Canada, and my goal is to reach Formula One someday. The revelation that Lewis had siblings he'd never mentioned before created another wave of excitement in the room. Jake also introduced himself. I'm Jake Thompson, Lewis's half-brother. I'm a medical engineer, and I've been studying our grandfather's innovations. Some of his ideas could still help improve modern Formula One. Lewis showed the journalist James Thompson's journal and patent documents. My grandfather predicted hybrid engines, energy recovery systems, and environmental sustainability in racing. He was thinking about these concepts in the 1970s. A reporter from Autosport magazine asked, what do you hope to achieve by revealing this story? Lewis looked at his family before answering. We want young black engineers and drivers to know that they belong in racing. We want them to see that our family has been contributing to this sport for 3 generations. We also want my grandfather to finally get recognition for his brilliance," Emma added. "James Thompson deserves to be remembered as one of the most important innovators in Formula One history." Marcus, despite his weakness, managed to speak into the microphone. "I made mistakes by leaving Lewis and keeping family secrets, but I hope sharing this story can inspire other people to pursue their dreams in racing." The press conference continued for another hour, with journalists asking detailed questions about James Thompson's innovations, Marcus's relationship with Lewis, and the family's plans for the future. As the event ended, Lewis felt relieved. They had controlled their own narrative and shared their grandfather's story with dignity and respect. But as they left the press conference, Lewis noticed that Marcus was having trouble breathing. The stress and excitement had clearly been too much for him. "Dad?" Emma said with concern. "Are you okay?" Marcus tried to answer but started coughing violently. Blood appeared on his handkerchief. "We need to get him to a hospital," Lewis said immediately. As they rushed Marcus to the emergency room, Lewis realized that revealing their family's secret might have cost his biological father his remaining strength. Some truths came with a price that was higher than anyone expected. Lewis sat in the hospital waiting room at Royal London Hospital, staring at the white walls and listening to the quiet hum of medical equipment. It was 8 p.m. on July 4th, and Marcus had been in the emergency room for 5 hours. Emma sat beside Lewis, her eyes red from crying. Jake paced back and forth near the window. Carmen stood quietly by the door, checking her phone every few minutes for updates from the doctors. The press conference had been a success. News about James Thompson's hidden racing legacy was already spreading around the world. But Lewis would trade all the positive media coverage to have Marcus healthy again. "This is my fault," Lewis said quietly. The stress of the press conference was too much for him. "Don't say that," Emma replied firmly. "Dad wanted to tell Grandpa's story. He said it was the most important thing he could do before he died." Dr. Sarah Mitchell came out of the emergency room wearing scrubs and a tired expression. Lewis stood up immediately. "How is he?" Lewis asked. "Mr. Thompson's condition has deteriorated significantly," Dr. Mitchell explained. "The cancer has spread to his lungs and liver. The excitement and stress of today accelerated the progression." Jake stopped pacing. "How much time does he have?" Dr. Mitchell looked at the family with sympathy. "Days, maybe a week at most." "I'm sorry." Lewis felt like the floor had disappeared under his feet. He had just found his biological father, and now he was about to lose him. "Can we see him?" Emma asked. "Yes, but he's very weak. Try not to tire him out too much." They walked into Marcus's hospital room together. Marcus was lying in bed with oxygen tubes in his nose and eye vines in his arms. He looked pale and small under the white hospital sheets. But when Marcus saw his family, he managed a weak smile. "Did we do it?" Marcus whispered. "Did we tell the story?" Lewis sat in the chair next to the bed. "We did it. The whole world knows about Grandpa James now." Marcus closed his eyes with relief. "Good. That's good." Emma held her father's hand. "Dad, the doctors say you don't have much time left." "I know," Marcus replied quietly. "I can feel it. But I'm not afraid anymore." "Why not?" Jake asked. Marcus looked around at his children. "Because I finally did something right. I helped tell my father's story. I brought my children together. I'm proud of that." Lewis felt tears in his eyes. Despite all of Marcus's mistakes, he was finding peace in his final days. "There's something else," Marcus said weakly. "Something I need to tell you before I'm gone." Carmen leaned forward. "What is it, Marcus?" Marcus reached under his pillow and pulled out an old envelope. "Your grandfather James left one more secret. Something he hid at Silverstone Circuit itself." Lewis took the envelope. It was addressed to Marcus Thompson, final instructions, in James's handwriting. "I found this in my father's belongings after he died," Marcus explained. "But I was too scared to follow the instructions. I didn't want to know any more family secrets." Lewis opened the envelope and found a detailed map of Silverstone Circuit. There were marks showing a specific location behind the old mechanics' garages. "What's supposed to be there?" Emma asked. Marcus struggled to speak. "A storage locker. Number 47. James hid something there in 1987, right before he died." Jake studied the map. Why would Grandpa hide something at a racetrack? Because he knew that someday a Thompson would race at Silverstone, Marcus replied. He wanted to leave something physical for his racing descendants to find. Lewis looked at the map more carefully. The location was in an area of Silverstone that wasn't used for modern race operations. It was where mechanics had worked on cars in the 1960s and 90s. What did he hide there? Lewis asked. Marcus shook his head weakly. I don't know. The letter just says for Lewis Hamilton, my grandson. Lewis felt amazed. His grandfather had somehow known, even in 1987, that Lewis would become a Formula One driver who raced at Silverstone. How could he predict that? Emma asked. Your grandfather understood racing better than anyone. Marcus replied, he could see talent when others couldn't. He watched Lewis karting when Lewis was just a baby, and he knew. Carmen spoke up. Marcus, do you have the key to this storage locker? Marcus pointed to the envelope. It should be in there. Lewis found a small key taped to the bottom of the envelope. It looked old and worn, like it had been waiting decades to be used. We should go there, Jake said. We should see what Grandpa left for Lewis. Marcus tried to sit up in bed. I want to come with you. Dad, you're too sick, Emma said gently. You need to rest. No, Marcus said firmly. This might be the last family adventure we have together. I'm not missing it. Dr. Mitchell was not happy about Marcus leaving the hospital, but she agreed to let him go for a few hours if he used a wheelchair and stayed calm. At 10 p.m., Lewis drove the family to Silverstone Circuit in his Mercedes. The track was quiet and dark, with only security lights illuminating the empty grandstands. Lewis used his Formula One credentials to get access to the facility after hours. The security guard recognized him immediately. Evening, Mr. Hamilton. Working late after your press conference today? Something like that, Lewis replied. They drove to the old section of the circuit, where the mechanics' garages from the 1960s were still standing. These buildings weren't used for regular operations anymore, but they were preserved as part of Silverstone's history. Marcus sat in his wheelchair as Lewis and Jake searched for storage locker number 47. Emma used her phone's flashlight to help them see in the dim lighting. Here it is, Jake called out. The storage locker was built into the wall of an old garage. It was rusty and clearly hadn't been opened in decades. Lewis put the key into the lock. It turned with difficulty, but the door opened with a loud creak. Inside the locker, Lewis found a wooden crate about the size of a suitcase. The wood was old, but still solid. What's in it? Emma asked, excitedly. Lewis opened the crate carefully. Inside, he found prototype engine parts, technical drawings, and a thick folder marked for Lewis Hamilton. My grandson. These are actual engine parts that Grandpa built, Jake said, examining the components with his engineering knowledge. Lewis opened the folder and found a letter dated 1987, the year James Thompson died. My dear Lewis. Lewis read aloud. I am writing this when you are only 2 years old, but I already know you will be special. Your father Marcus may have left you, but you carry the racing spirit of the Thompson family. Marcus listened from his wheelchair, tears streaming down his face. Lewis continued reading. These engine parts represent 40 years of my work. If you ever decide to share my story with the world, these prototypes will prove that our family's contributions to racing were real. The letter explained that James Thompson had built working prototypes of his hybrid engine design. These weren't just drawings on paper. They were actual functioning parts that could be tested and demonstrated. Grandpa was even more brilliant than we thought, Emma said in amazement. Lewis found another section of the letter that made his heart stop. Lewis, you are not the first Thompson to race in Formula One. I raced one time in secret in 1962. I finished third, but the results were hidden because of my race. The proof is in this crate. What? Jake said. Grandpa actually raced in Formula One? Lewis dug deeper into the crate and found a racing helmet, a trophy, and race documents from 1962. The papers showed that James Thompson had entered the British Grand Prix that year under the false name J.T. Roberts. This is incredible, Emma said. Our grandfather was actually a Formula One driver. The documents told an amazing story. In 1962, James Thompson was working as a mechanic for the Lotus team. The regular driver had gotten sick on race day, and team owner Colin Chapman had needed someone who could handle the car. James had been secretly testing the cars after hours, learning every detail about how they worked. Chapman knew James was fast, But he also knew that a black driver wouldn't be accepted in Formula One. Chapman let Grandpa race under a fake name, Lewis realized. But why keep it secret for so long? Lewis found a photograph of James Thompson in a Lotus racing suit, standing next to Colin Chapman and Jim Clark. All three men were smiling, but there was also sadness in their eyes. A handwritten note on the back of the photo explained, "This was the only time I got to race as an equal. Chapman and Clark treated me like family that day." But we all knew it could never happen again. James Thompson had finished third in that 1962 British Grand Prix, but the official results showed J.T. Roberts in third place. His real achievement had been hidden from racing history. "The sport lost something when Grandpa couldn't race openly," Lewis said. "How many other talented drivers were kept out because of prejudice?" Marcus spoke weakly from his wheelchair. "Your grandfather put all his energy into engineering instead of driving. If he couldn't race openly, he would contribute to racing in other ways." At the very bottom of the crate, Lewis found a modern envelope that didn't look like it belonged with the other items from the 1960s. It was addressed to Lewis Hamilton in Marcus's handwriting, and it was dated just 2 weeks ago. "Marcus, you added something to this crate recently?" Lewis asked. Marcus nodded. "When I knew I was dying, I wanted to add my own message to my father's legacy." Lewis opened Marcus's letter and read, "Lewis, by the time you read this, I will probably be gone. But I need you to know that your grandfather's racing legacy didn't end in 1987. It continued through you." The letter continued, "James Thompson may have raced only once in Formula One, but his grandson has won multiple world championships. His engineering genius lives on in your understanding of racing cars. His determination lives on in your refusal to give up." Lewis felt overwhelmed by the weight of family history. His grandfather had been a secret Formula One driver, a brilliant engineer, and a visionary who predicted the future of racing. "What do we do with all this information?" Emma asked. Marcus struggled to speak from his wheelchair. "We add it to the story. We make sure the world knows that James Thompson wasn't just an engineer. He was also a racing driver who deserved recognition." Lewis looked around at his family in the dim light of the old garage. They had uncovered 60 years of hidden racing history in just 3 days. "Tomorrow we'll share this with Bernie and the media," Lewis decided. Grandpa's full story deserves to be told. But as they prepared to leave Silverstone, Marcus began coughing violently again. The excitement of discovering his father's final secret had pushed his weakened body beyond its limits. "Dad," Emma shouted, "we need to get you back to the hospital." As they rushed Marcus back to the car, Lewis realized that this might be their last family adventure together. Some discoveries were worth making, even if they came at the very end of a life. By the time they got Marcus back to Royal London Hospital, it was past midnight on July 5th. The nurses rushed him into intensive care while Lewis, Emma, Jake, and Carmen waited anxiously in the family room. Dr. Mitchell came out 2 hours later looking exhausted and concerned. "Mr. Thompson's condition is critical," she said quietly. "His body is shutting down." The excitement of tonight pushed him beyond what his system could handle. Emma wiped tears from her eyes. "How long does he have?" "Hours. Maybe until tomorrow evening at most," Dr. Mitchell replied gently. "But he's conscious and asking to see all of you." They gathered around Marcus's bed in the ICU. He was connected to multiple machines, but his eyes were alert and focused. "Did you find it?" Marcus whispered. "Did you find what my father left at Silverstone?" Lewis nodded. "We found everything. The engine parts, the racing helmet, the proof that Grandpa actually raced in Formula One." Marcus smiled weakly. He would be so proud that his story is finally being told. "Dad," Emma said, holding his hand. "Save your strength. Don't try to talk too much." But Marcus shook his head. "I need to tell you something while I still can. Something about your grandfather that even I just learned recently." Marcus reached into the drawer of his bedside table and pulled out a folder with shaking hands. "Bernie Ecclestone brought this to me yesterday, but I was waiting for the right moment to share it." Lewis took the folder. Inside were documents from the 1980s with Bernie Ecclestone's letterhead. "What is this?" Lewis asked. Marcus struggled to speak. "Your grandfather didn't just design racing cars. He also created something that could revolutionize modern Formula One." Lewis opened the documents and found technical drawings for an engine design that looked incredibly advanced. The plans showed a hybrid system that combined electric motors with traditional fuel engines. This looks like modern Formula One technology, Jake said, examining the engineering diagrams. That's because it is, Marcus replied weakly. Your grandfather designed the hybrid engine system that Formula One uses today. But he created it in 1983, 30 years before the sport actually adopted it. Emma looked at the detailed technical drawings. You mean Formula One could have had hybrid engines in the 90s if the teams had been willing to listen to a black engineer, Marcus said. But they rejected James's ideas, saying electric power would never work in racing. Lewis felt angry reading through the documents. His grandfather had been decades ahead of his time, but the racing establishment had dismissed his innovations because of prejudice. What happened to these designs? Lewis asked. Carmen spoke from her chair by the window. James tried to present his hybrid engine concept to several Formula One teams in the 1980s. Ferrari, McLaren, Williams. They all turned him down. Marcus nodded. The teams said his ideas were too complicated, too expensive, and too risky. They couldn't imagine that electric power could make racing cars faster. But they were wrong, Jake said, studying the technical specifications. This hybrid system would have given cars more power and better fuel efficiency. Lewis found a letter from Ferrari, dated 1984, rejecting James Thompson's hybrid engine proposal. The letter was polite but dismissive. While we appreciate your innovative thinking, Ferrari believes that traditional engines are the future of Formula One. Now look at Formula One today, Emma said. Every car uses hybrid power, just like Grandpa predicted. Marcus reached for another document. There's more. Your grandfather also predicted that racing would need to become environmentally sustainable. Lewis found design notes for biofuel systems, energy recovery technologies, and carbon-neutral racing operations. All of these concepts had been written in James Thompson's handwriting. Grandpa saw the future of racing when everyone else was stuck in the past, Lewis said in amazement. Bernie Ecclestone appeared in the doorway of the hospital room. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to check on Marcus. Bernie, Lewis said. How long have you known about these hybrid engine designs? Bernie walked over to Marcus's bedside. Your grandfather showed me those plans in 1984. I tried to convince teams to take them seriously, but nobody would listen. Why not? Emma asked. Because James Thompson was ahead of his time in every way, Bernie explained. Not just technically, but socially. The racing world wasn't ready for his innovations or his identity. Marcus struggled to sit up slightly. Bernie, tell them about the Mercedes meeting. Bernie's face became serious. In 1985, James had a meeting with Mercedes executives. He presented his hybrid engine technology and explained how it could make their cars faster and more efficient. What happened? Lewis asked. Mercedes was interested, Bernie continued. Very interested. They were ready to develop James's hybrid system for their road cars and their future racing programs. Lewis felt excited. So Mercedes supported Grandpa's innovations? Bernie shook his head sadly. The deal fell through when Mercedes executives learned that James was black. They said their customers and partners wouldn't accept technology developed by a black engineer. The room fell silent. Lewis felt sick thinking about how racism had robbed his grandfather of recognition and robbed Formula One of advanced technology. So the sport lost 30 years of innovation because of prejudice, Lewis said angrily. Exactly, Bernie replied. If Formula One had adopted James's hybrid technology in the 1980s, the sport would be decades ahead of where it is now. Marcus was getting weaker, but he managed to speak again. Lewis, there's something else. Something that could still change Formula One today. Lewis leaned closer to his biological father. What do you mean? Marcus pointed to a section of the technical documents. Your grandfather's hybrid design includes innovations that modern Formula One hasn't adopted yet. Jake examined the engineering specifications more carefully. Dad's right, this energy recovery system is more advanced than what current F1 cars use. Lewis studied his grandfather's designs with new appreciation. You mean these innovations could still help modern racing? Absolutely, Bernie said. James's 1983 hybrid design includes features that would make today's Formula One cars faster, more efficient, and more environmentally friendly. Emma looked excited despite the sadness of the situation. We could give Grandpa's innovations to current F1 teams. We could help make the sport better. Marcus smiled weakly. That would be the perfect tribute to your grandfather, using his forgotten innovations to improve modern racing. Lewis made a decision. Bernie, can you help us present Grandpa's advanced hybrid technology to current Formula One teams? I can do more than that, Bernie replied. I can help you start a foundation in James Thompson's name. A foundation that supports young black engineers and promotes innovation in motorsport. Carmen stood up from her chair. James would love that idea. He always wanted to help other people achieve their racing dreams. Marcus was struggling to stay conscious, but he managed to speak one more time. Lewis, promise me something. Anything, Lewis replied. Promise me you'll use your grandfather's story to inspire other people. Show them that talent and innovation come from everywhere, not just from the people who get recognized. Lewis held Marcus's hand. I promise. Grandpa's legacy will help other people believe they belong in racing. Emma wiped tears from her eyes. Dad, we're gonna make you proud. We're gonna make sure Grandpa's innovations finally get used. Jake agreed. The Thompson family racing legacy will continue through all of us. Over the next few hours, Marcus's condition continued to deteriorate. But he seemed peaceful, knowing that his father's story would finally be told, and his innovations might still change Formula One. As the sun rose on July 5th, Marcus Thompson took his last breath surrounded by his children and Carmen. His final words were barely audible. Tell Lewis he made the Thompson name mean something in racing. Lewis, Emma, and Jake held each other as they grieved for the father they had just lost. But even in their sadness, they felt proud of what Marcus had accomplished in his final days. He had brought his family together. He had helped reveal James Thompson's hidden genius, and he had found peace by doing something meaningful before he died. Bernie Ecclestone stayed with the family through the morning, helping them plan how to honor both Marcus and James Thompson's legacies. Your grandfather's innovations could still revolutionize Formula One, Bernie said gently. And your father's courage in telling the truth will inspire other families to share their own hidden stories. Lewis looked at the hybrid engine designs spread across the hospital table. His grandfather's forgotten innovations could still help make racing more advanced and more sustainable. We'll start the James Thompson Foundation next week, Lewis decided. We'll use Grandpa's technology to help modern Formula One, and we'll support young engineers who might otherwise be overlooked. Emma nodded through her tears. And I'll keep racing. I'll show that the Thompson family belongs in Formula One. Jake agreed. I'll help develop Grandpa's innovations for modern racing. His engineering genius will finally get used. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Lewis realized that his family's story had changed from a tragedy into something hopeful. Marcus's death was heartbreaking, but his final act had been to ensure that James Thompson's brilliance would finally be recognized. Some innovations were worth waiting for, even if they took 60 years to see the light. 3 days after Marcus's funeral, Lewis stood in the Mercedes Formula One factory in Brackley, England. He held his grandfather's hybrid engine designs in one hand and a modern tablet computer in the other. Toto Wolff, the Mercedes team principal, studied James Thompson's technical drawings with amazement. Lewis, these designs are incredible, Toto said. Your grandfather was thinking about energy recovery systems that were just starting to develop now. Lewis felt proud and sad at the same time. He tried to show these innovations to racing teams in the 1980s, but nobody would listen. That was their loss, replied Dr. Andy Cowell, Mercedes engine director. Some of these concepts could make our current power units 20% more efficient. Emma and Jake stood beside Lewis as the Mercedes engineers examined their grandfather's work. Emma was wearing her racing suit from the Canadian Formula 4 Championship, and Jake had his engineering notebook ready to discuss technical details. Can you actually use Grandpa's designs? Emma asked. Dr. Cowell nodded enthusiastically. Not only can we use them, we want to develop them further. These innovations could help Mercedes win more championships while making Formula One more environmentally friendly. Lewis realized that his grandfather's forgotten brilliance might finally change modern racing. What would you need to make this happen? Partnership, Toto replied. We want to work with the James Thompson Foundation to develop these technologies. We'll give your grandfather full credit for his innovations. Lewis felt emotional hearing this. The same company that had rejected James Thompson in 1985 because of racism was now eager to honor his legacy and use his designs. There's something else, Dr. Cowell said, pulling up images on a large computer screen. We've been analyzing your grandfather's 1962 racing helmet that you found at Silverstone. The screen showed detailed photos of the helmet James Thompson had worn during his secret Formula One race. "What did you find?" Jake asked. "The helmet contains modifications that your grandfather made himself," Dr. Cowell explained. "Better ventilation, improved visibility, and safety features that weren't standard in." Emma studied the helmet modifications. Even when he was racing, Grandpa was innovating. "Exactly," Toto said. James Thompson wasn't just fast on the track. He was thinking about how to make racing safer and more advanced. Lewis looked at the helmet that his grandfather had worn during his one chance to race in Formula One. It represented both achievement and missed opportunity. "We want to display this helmet in our museum," Toto continued, "along with your grandfather's technical drawings and the story of his contributions to racing." "That would be amazing," Lewis said. "Grandpa deserves to be remembered in racing history." Over the next few hours, the Mercedes engineers showed Lewis, Emma, and Jake how they could adapt James Thompson's 1983 hybrid designs for modern Formula One cars. "Your grandfather's energy recovery system is more sophisticated than what we use now," Dr. Cowell explained. "It could give our cars an extra 50 horsepower while using less fuel." Jake took detailed notes as the engineers discussed technical specifications. "This is incredible. Grandpa's 40-year-old design is still more advanced than current technology." Emma was particularly interested in how the innovations might help her own racing career. "Could these technologies be used in Formula 4 and Formula 2 cars?" "Absolutely," Toto replied. "The James Thompson Foundation could help make these advanced technologies available to lower racing series too." Lewis realized that his grandfather's innovations could help racing drivers at every level, not just Formula One. As they toured the Mercedes factory, Lewis received a phone call from Bernie Ecclestone. "Lewis, I have news about the James Thompson story," Bernie said. "Netflix wants to make a documentary about your family's racing legacy." "Netflix?" Lewis asked with surprise. "They're proposing a feature-length documentary that would tell your grandfather's complete story. The hidden innovations, the secret Formula One race, the impact on modern racing." Lewis put the call on speaker so Emma and Jake could hear. "What would the documentary include?" Emma asked. "Everything," Bernie replied. "Interviews with current Formula One drivers, technical analysis of James's innovations, historical footage from the 1960s, and your family's personal story." Jake looked excited. "That would reach millions of people around the world." "Exactly," Bernie said. "The documentary could inspire young engineers and drivers who think they don't belong in racing." Lewis thought about the global impact a Netflix documentary could have. "How soon could this happen?" "Netflix wants to start filming next month," Bernie replied. "They want to release it during the Formula One season when racing fans are most engaged." Emma grabbed Lewis's arm. "Brother, this is our chance to share Grandpa's story with the whole world." Over the next week, Lewis worked with Bernie, Netflix, and the Mercedes team to plan the documentary and the James Thompson Foundation. The foundation would have three main goals: supporting young black engineers and drivers, developing James Thompson's forgotten innovations, and preserving the history of hidden contributors to racing. "We're calling it the Thompson Effect," Lewis explained to a room full of journalists at the foundation's launch event. "Because my grandfather's innovations will have a lasting effect on Formula One and motorsport." Emma spoke at the event too. "The foundation will help young people like me know that we belong in racing, regardless of our background." Jake announced that Mercedes would be the foundation's first major partner. "We'll be developing James Thompson's hybrid technology for modern Formula One cars, with full credit to his genius." The media response was overwhelmingly positive. Racing publications around the world wrote articles about James Thompson's hidden contributions to Formula One history. Lewis received messages from young black engineers and drivers thanking him for sharing the family story. Many said they felt more confident pursuing racing careers after learning about the Thompson family legacy. But the most meaningful response came from Sir Lewis Hamilton himself. Lewis realized that telling his grandfather's story had changed how he saw his own success. "I always thought my achievements were just about my own talent and hard work," Lewis said in an interview. "But now I understand that I'm part of a racing legacy that goes back 3 generations." 2 weeks after launching the foundation, Lewis received exciting news from Mercedes. "We've built a prototype engine using your grandfather's 1983 hybrid design," Dr. Cowell announced during a phone call. "The results are better than we expected." "How much better?" Lewis asked. 25% more power, 30% better fuel efficiency, and 50% lower emissions. Dr. Cowell replied, "Your grandfather's technology could revolutionize modern Formula One." Lewis felt amazed that his grandfather's 40-year-old innovations were still superior to current technology. "When can we test it?" Lewis asked. "Next month at Silverstone," Dr. Cowell said. "We want you to be the first driver to test James Thompson's hybrid technology in a modern Formula One car." Lewis realized that he would be driving his grandfather's innovations at the same track where the family's story had begun just 1 month earlier. Emma was making progress in her own racing career. The publicity from the Thompson family story had attracted sponsors and teams interested in supporting her climb toward Formula One. "3 teams have offered me drives in Formula 2 next year," Emma told Lewis excitedly. "They all want to support the Thompson racing legacy." Jake had taken a job with Mercedes as a development engineer, working specifically on James Thompson's hybrid innovations. "It's amazing," Jake said. "Every day I'm learning something new about Grandpa's engineering genius." As the Netflix documentary filming began, Lewis reflected on how much his life had changed in just 1 month. He had discovered a biological father he never knew existed. He had learned about siblings who shared his passion for racing. He had uncovered a grandfather whose innovations could still change Formula One. Most importantly, he had found a way to honor his family's legacy while inspiring other people to pursue their racing dreams. The wooden box that his mother had given him at Silverstone had indeed changed everything, just as she had promised. But as Lewis prepared for the hybrid engine test at Silverstone, he realized that his grandfather's greatest innovation wasn't just technical. James Thompson's greatest innovation was believing that talent and brilliance could come from anywhere, and that racing belonged to anyone who loved it enough to pursue it. Some legacies were worth waiting decades to discover, especially when they could inspire the next generation of racing innovators. 1 month after Marcus's funeral, Lewis stood on the starting grid at Silverstone Circuit. But this wasn't a race day. This was the most important test of his life. In front of him sat a Mercedes Formula One car powered by his grandfather's hybrid engine technology. The car looked identical to a modern Mercedes W114. But under the hood was James Thompson's 1983 innovation, updated with 40 years of additional engineering. Emma and Jake stood in the Mercedes garage, watching their brother prepare to drive their grandfather's dreams. "Are you nervous?" Emma asked Lewis. "More excited than nervous," Lewis replied, pulling on his racing helmet. "I'm about to drive Grandpa's vision of the future." Dr. Andy Cowell approached with final technical updates. "Lewis, the engine is performing even better than our computer models predicted. Your grandfather's energy recovery system is generating incredible power." Toto Wolff joined them on the grid. "This test could change Formula One forever. If James Thompson's technology works as well as we think it will, every team will want to develop similar systems." Lewis climbed into the cockpit and felt the familiar comfort of a Formula One racing seat. But knowing that his grandfather's innovations were powering the car made this feel different from every other test he had ever done. "Radio check, Lewis," came Pete Bonington's voice through the helmet speakers. "Radio's good, Bono," Lewis replied. "How's the engine looking?" "All systems perfect," Pete responded. "Your grandfather built something special." Lewis drove out of the garage and onto the Silverstone track where his family's story had begun 2 months earlier. The Mercedes felt incredibly smooth and powerful as the hybrid system engaged. Through Copse Corner, where Lewis had made his mistake during the British Grand Prix, the car felt perfectly balanced. The extra power from James Thompson's energy recovery system made acceleration feel effortless. "How does it feel?" Pete asked over the radio. "Like the car has superpowers," Lewis replied. "The hybrid system is incredible." In the garage, Emma watched the timing screens as Lewis's lap times got faster and faster. "He's already 3 seconds quicker than the current car," she said excitedly. Jake monitored the engine data on his computer. "Grandpa's energy recovery system is working perfectly. It's generating 50% more power than current Formula One technology." After 20 laps, Lewis came back to the garage with a huge smile on his face. "That was amazing," Lewis said, climbing out of the car. "Grandpa's technology makes the car faster, more efficient, and easier to drive." Dr. Cowell examined the engine data. Fuel consumption is down 30%, but power output is up 25%. James Thompson's innovations are exactly what Formula One needs. Toto looked at the results with amazement. Louis, your grandfather didn't just predict the future of racing. He designed it. Emma walked over to the car and ran her hand along the bodywork. Knowing that Grandpa's technology is inside this car makes me so proud. It should, Louis said. He was a genius who was ahead of his time. But as the day continued, Bernie Ecclestone arrived at Silverstone with surprising news. Louis, I've been doing more research into your grandfather's 1962 Formula One race, Bernie said. I found something that changes the story completely. Louis, Emma, and Jake gathered around Bernie in the Mercedes hospitality unit. What did you find? Louis asked. Bernie pulled out a folder of old documents. Official lap times from the 1962 British Grand Prix. The times for every driver, including the mysterious JT Roberts. Louis looked at the timing sheets. Grandpa finished third, just like the documents we found showed. That's what I thought too, Bernie said. But I had a computer expert analyze the lap times more carefully. Bernie spread out detailed timing analysis on the table. Your grandfather wasn't just third. For most of the race, he was actually faster than Jim Clark and Graham Hill. Emma's eyes widened. You mean Grandpa was fast enough to win? Not just fast enough, Bernie replied. He was actually leading the race for 15 laps. But something happened that made him drop back to third place. Jake studied the timing data. What could have made him lose the lead? Bernie pulled out another document. Team orders. Colin Chapman told James to let Jim Clark win the race. Louis felt angry and sad at the same time. They made Grandpa give up victory? Chapman was protecting James, Bernie explained. If a black driver had won the 1962 British Grand Prix under a fake name, and then the truth came out, it would have created a huge scandal. Emma shook her head. So Grandpa could have been the first black Formula One race winner, but he had to sacrifice victory to protect his secret? Exactly, Bernie said. James Thompson should have won his only Formula One race, but he chose to hide his achievement to avoid controversy. Louis realized that his grandfather's sacrifice had been even greater than they knew. James hadn't just hidden his engineering contributions. He had also hidden what should have been a historic racing victory. Is there any way to prove this? Louis asked. Bernie nodded. I have radio transcripts from the race. Chapman's actual words telling James to let Clark pass for the win. Bernie played an old audio recording on his phone. Through static and noise, they could hear Colin Chapman's voice. JT let Jim through. You're too fast today, and that's gonna raise questions we can't answer. Then came James Thompson's response. Understood. I'll drop back. Louis felt emotional hearing his grandfather's voice for the first time. Even while giving up victory, James sounded calm and professional. Grandpa put the team first, even when it cost him personal glory. Louis said. Jake was taking notes as he listened to the recording. This completely changes how we understand Grandpa's racing career. Emma looked at Louis. Your grandfather wasn't just a hidden engineer and a secret driver. He was also a Formula One race winner who never got credit. Bernie put away the documents. There's more. After the race, Jim Clark came to find James in the garage. What did Clark say? Louis asked. According to witnesses, Clark told James, you were the fastest man on track today. In a fair world, you would have won this race. Louis felt proud of Jim Clark for recognizing his grandfather's talent, but also sad that fairness hadn't been possible in. What should we do with this information? Emma asked. Louis thought carefully. We add it to Grandpa's story. We make sure people know that James Thompson wasn't just a great engineer. He was also a Formula One race winner who sacrificed victory for the greater good. Toto Wolff had been listening to the conversation. Mercedes would be honored to officially recognize James Thompson as the moral winner of the 1962 British Grand Prix. What do you mean? Jake asked. We'll create a special trophy in James's honor, Toto explained. We'll present it at this year's British Grand Prix, 61 years after he should have won. Louis felt emotional thinking about his grandfather finally getting recognition for his racing achievement. The Netflix documentary should include this story too, Emma said. People need to know that Grandpa was fast enough to win races, not just design cars. Over the rest of the day, Louis continued testing the hybrid engine while thinking about his grandfather's hidden victory. Every lap he drove felt like he was honoring James Thompson's memory. As the sun set over Silverstone, Louis completed his final test lap. The car powered by his grandfather's innovations had been perfect all day. Final numbers are incredible, Dr. Cowell announced. James Thompson's technology could make Formula One cars 40% more efficient while increasing performance. Emma walked over to Lewis as he climbed out of the car. How does it feel to drive Grandpa's dreams? Like I'm carrying on something important, Lewis replied. Like I'm part of a legacy that's bigger than just my own career. Jake examined the engine one more time. Grandpa's innovations are going to change Formula One forever. Every team will want this technology. Bernie approached the family as they prepared to leave Silverstone. Your grandfather would be so proud of today. His hidden brilliance is finally getting the recognition it deserves. As they drove away from the circuit, Lewis realized that the wooden box his mother had given him 2 months ago had led to the most important discovery of his life. He had learned that success wasn't just about individual talent. It was about carrying on the dreams and innovations of the people who came before you. His grandfather's hybrid technology would help make Formula One more advanced and more sustainable. His grandfather's hidden race victory would inspire other drivers who faced discrimination. His grandfather's engineering genius would be studied and celebrated for generations. But most importantly, his grandfather's story would show young people that they belonged in racing, no matter what obstacles they faced. Some victories were worth waiting 60 years to celebrate, especially when they could inspire the future of motorsport. 2 weeks after the successful hybrid engine test, Lewis sat in his hotel room in Hungary, preparing for the Hungary Grand Prix. But his mind wasn't on the upcoming race. Tomorrow was the premiere of the Netflix documentary about his family's story. Emma knocked on his hotel room door. Lewis, are you ready for tomorrow? Lewis opened the door to find Emma holding a tablet computer. As ready as I can be. Are you nervous about the documentary? Excited more than nervous, Emma replied, sitting on the couch. The whole world is going to learn about Grandpa's genius. Lewis looked at the tablet screen, which showed the Netflix homepage featuring their documentary. The title read Hidden Champions, The Thompson Racing Legacy. Jake sent me the final trailer, Emma said, pressing play. Lewis watched as dramatic music played over footage of vintage Formula One cars, technical drawings, and family photographs. His grandfather's voice from the 1962 radio recording played over images of modern Mercedes cars. This looks incredible, Lewis said. Netflix really captured Grandpa's story. The trailer showed interviews with Lewis, Emma, Jake, Bernie Ecclestone, and current Formula One drivers. All of them spoke about James Thompson's hidden contributions to racing. Look at this part, Emma said, fast-forwarding to a section featuring her own racing career. The trailer showed Emma driving her Formula 4 car while Lewis narrated. My sister Emma carries on our grandfather's racing spirit. She represents the future of the Thompson legacy. Lewis felt proud watching Emma's racing footage. In just 2 months, she had gone from being an unknown driver in Canada to being featured in a major Netflix documentary. How are you feeling about everything? Lewis asked his sister. Emma set down the tablet. Different. 2 months ago, I was just Emma Thompson, a girl trying to make it in racing. Now I'm Emma Thompson, granddaughter of a Formula One innovator. Is that pressure or inspiration? Lewis asked. Both, Emma replied honestly. But mostly inspiration. Knowing that Grandpa faced so much discrimination and still achieved incredible things makes my own challenges seem smaller. Lewis understood what Emma meant. Learning about his grandfather's hidden genius had changed how he saw his own career obstacles. There's something else, Emma said, pulling an envelope from her jacket pocket. I found this in Dad's belongings when we were cleaning out his hotel room. Lewis took the envelope. It was addressed to Lewis Hamilton, final letter in Marcus's handwriting. When did he write this? Lewis asked. The date on it is July 3rd, the day before he died, Emma replied. He must have written it while we were at the press conference. Lewis opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter written in Marcus's careful handwriting. My dear son Lewis, if you are reading this, then I have passed away, and our family's story has been told to the world. I am writing this on what will probably be my last day of strength, and I want to leave you with some final thoughts. When I learned I was dying, I thought my life had been a complete waste. I had abandoned you, kept family secrets, and failed to live up to my father's example. But these past few days have shown me that even failed fathers can do something meaningful before they die. By bringing our family together, I helped you discover that you are part of something much bigger than your individual success. You carry the racing genius of James Thompson, the engineering innovation of 3 generations, and the dreams of everyone who believes that talent can come from anywhere. Your grandfather would be so proud of everything you have accomplished. But more than that, he would be proud of how you are using your success to help other people. The James Thompson Foundation will inspire young engineers and drivers for decades to come. Emma and Jake are remarkable young people. Emma has your determination and talent. Jake has your grandfather's engineering brilliance. Together, the 3 of you will carry on our family's racing legacy in ways I never could have imagined. I need you to know that meeting you, even for such a short time, was the greatest privilege of my life. You are everything I dreamed you would become, and more. Anthony Hamilton raised you to be a man of character and compassion. I am grateful to him every day. Please take care of your brother and sister. They love you deeply, and they need your guidance as they pursue their own racing dreams. Show them that the Thompson name means something special in motorsport. Finally, I want you to have something that belonged to your grandfather. Check the bottom drawer of my hotel room dresser. You'll find a small wooden box that James gave me when I was 18. Inside is a ring that belonged to his father, your great-grandfather. It has been passed down through 3 generations of Thompson men. I hope you will wear it when you race, as a reminder that you carry the hopes and dreams of your entire family. I love you, Lewis. I am proud to be your father, even though I earned that title too late to matter. Your father, Marcus Thompson. Lewis finished reading with tears in his eyes. Even in his final hours, Marcus had been thinking about how to help his family. Did you find the wooden box he mentioned? Lewis asked Emma. Emma nodded and pulled a small wooden box from her other jacket pocket. It was exactly where he said it would be. Lewis opened the box and found a simple gold ring. Inside the band was engraved JT 1920-1987, his grandfather's initials and dates. This ring belonged to great-grandfather James's father. Lewis realized, it's been in our family for over 100 years. Emma watched as Lewis slipped the ring onto his finger. Dad wanted you to wear it when you race. Lewis looked at the ring on his finger. It felt like a connection to 4 generations of Thompson men who had loved racing but faced different obstacles. I'll wear it in tomorrow's race, Lewis decided. For Grandpa James, for Marcus, and for all the Thompson family members who never got recognition. The next evening, Lewis, Emma, and Jake attended the Netflix documentary premiere in London. The theater was filled with Formula One drivers, team principals, journalists, and racing fans. As the documentary began, Lewis felt nervous about how their family's story would be received. But as the film unfolded, he realized that Netflix had created something special. The documentary told James Thompson's story with respect and dignity. It showed his engineering innovations, his secret Formula One race, and his sacrifice for the greater good. It also showed how his legacy had inspired Lewis, Emma, and Jake to pursue their own racing dreams. During the section about the 1962 British Grand Prix, the theater was completely silent. The audience watched in amazement as Bernie Ecclestone played the radio recording of James Thompson being told to give up victory. When the documentary ended, the theater erupted in applause. Lewis, Emma, and Jake stood up to acknowledge the crowd's appreciation. Your grandfather's story is incredible, said Max Verstappen, who had attended the premiere. He was a true pioneer who deserved so much more recognition. Charles Leclerc agreed. Learning about James Thompson's innovations makes me appreciate how much the sport owes hidden contributors. After the premiere, Lewis received hundreds of messages from young engineers and drivers around the world. Many said that James Thompson's story had inspired them to pursue their own racing dreams despite facing discrimination or obstacles. Mission accomplished, Emma said as they read through the messages. Grandpa's story is inspiring exactly the people it was meant to inspire. Jake showed Lewis an email from a young black engineering student in South Africa. This girl says she's applying to universities to study automotive engineering because of Grandpa's story. Lewis felt proud that his grandfather's legacy was already creating positive change. This is what Marcus meant about doing something meaningful before he died. 2 days later, Lewis stood on the starting grid for the Hungarian Grand Prix wearing his great-grandfather's ring. The Mercedes car he was about to drive contained hybrid technology based on his grandfather's 1983 innovations. As the race began, Lewis felt like he was carrying 4 generations of Thompson family dreams. Every corner, every overtake, every moment of the race honored his grandfather's hidden brilliance. Lewis won the Hungarian Grand Prix, his first victory since learning about his family's racing legacy. As he climbed out of the car in victory lane, he looked up at the sky and whispered, "That was for you, Grandpa James." In the crowd, Emma and Jake cheered for their brother. They understood that Lewis's victory represented something bigger than just another race win. It was proof that talent, determination, and innovation could overcome any obstacle. Some legacies took generations to fulfill, but when they finally came to fruition, they inspired the whole world. 6 months later, Lewis stood on the podium at Silverstone Circuit after winning the 2024 British Grand Prix. But this victory felt different from any other win in his career. In the crowd, Emma was celebrating her own success. 2 weeks earlier, she had signed with McLaren's development program and would be racing in Formula 2 next season. Jake stood beside her wearing his new Mercedes engineering uniform. As Lewis held up the winner's trophy, he looked down at the great-grandfather's ring on his finger. The simple gold band had become his most treasured possession, connecting him to 4 generations of Thompson family racing heritage. "Lewis," called a familiar voice from the crowd. Lewis looked down and saw Anthony Hamilton pushing through the barriers to reach the podium area. Anthony was wearing the biggest smile Lewis had ever seen. "Dad," Lewis called back, using the word that still meant everything to him. Anthony reached the podium and hugged Lewis tightly. "I'm so proud of you, son. Not just for winning today, but for everything you've done to honor your family's story." Lewis felt emotional. Despite learning about his biological father and grandfather, Anthony Hamilton remained the most important person in his life. "You're still my real father," Lewis said into Anthony's ear. "Nothing will ever change that." "I know," Anthony replied, "and I'm honored to share you with the Thompson family legacy." After the podium ceremony, Lewis walked with Anthony, Emma, and Jake to a special display that Mercedes had created in the Silverstone Museum. Behind glass cases were James Thompson's original technical drawings, his 1962 racing helmet, and photographs from his secret Formula One career. The centerpiece of the display was a replica of the wooden box that had started everything 6 months earlier. "Visitors can learn Grandpa's complete story here," Emma said, reading the information plaque. "His engineering innovations, his secret race victory, and his influence on modern Formula One." Jake pointed to a section showing how James Thompson's hybrid technology was now being used by multiple Formula One teams. Mercedes shared Grandpa's innovations with other teams for free. Now the whole sport benefits from his genius. Lewis felt proud that his grandfather's technology was helping make Formula One more advanced and environmentally sustainable. 5 teams were now using hybrid systems based on James Thompson's 1983 designs. "There's something else," Anthony said, pulling out an envelope. "This came for you today." Lewis opened the envelope and found an official letter from the Formula One organization. The letterhead showed the FIA logo and the signature of the Formula One president. "What does it say?" Emma asked. Lewis read aloud, "Dear Mr. Hamilton, the Formula One organization is pleased to inform you that James Thompson will be posthumously inducted into the Formula One Hall of Fame. His contributions to racing innovation and his historic 1962 race performance make him worthy of the sport's highest recognition." Jake's eyes widened. "Grandpa is going into the Formula One Hall of Fame? The ceremony is next month in Monaco." Lewis continued reading. "The Thompson family is invited to accept the honor on James's behalf." Emma started crying happy tears. Grandpa is finally getting the recognition he deserved. As they walked through the Silverstone paddock after the race, Lewis reflected on how much his life had changed since that morning in July when his mother had given him the mysterious wooden box. He had discovered a biological father who taught him about courage and redemption. He had found siblings who shared his passion for racing. He had learned about a grandfather whose genius had been hidden for 60 years. Most importantly, he had found a way to use his success to inspire other people who thought they didn't belong in racing. "Lewis," called a young voice from behind them. Lewis turned to see a black teenage girl running toward him with an engineering textbook in her hands. "Mr. Hamilton, I'm Zara Muhammad," the girl said breathlessly. "I'm studying automotive engineering at university because of your grandfather's story." Lewis smiled. "That's amazing, Zara. What do you want to do in racing?" "I want to design Formula One cars," Zara replied. Your documentary showed me that black engineers belong in this sport, even if people try to keep us out. Emma stepped forward. Zara, have you heard about the James Thompson Foundation Scholarship Program? Zara shook her head. We're offering full scholarships to young engineers from underrepresented backgrounds, Jake explained. You should apply. Lewis pulled out his phone and took a photo with Zara. Keep pursuing your dreams. The racing world needs more innovators like you. As Zara walked away clutching her engineering textbook, Lewis realized that his grandfather's story was already changing lives. That evening, the Thompson family gathered for dinner at a quiet restaurant near Silverstone. Carmen joined them, along with Bernie Ecclestone, who had become like an honorary family member. 6 months ago, none of us imagined this day would come, Carmen said, raising her glass in a toast. Bernie smiled. James Thompson waited 60 years for recognition. I'm glad I lived long enough to see him get it. Emma looked around the table at her family. I keep thinking about Dad. Marcus would be so proud of everything that's happened. He is proud, Lewis said firmly. Wherever he is, Marcus knows that he did something meaningful before he died. Jake agreed. Dad brought us all together. Without him, we never would have learned about Grandpa's legacy. Lewis thought about Marcus Thompson, the man who had made terrible mistakes but found redemption in his final days. Marcus had given Lewis the greatest gift possible: knowledge of where he really came from. There's something I want to tell you all, Lewis said, standing up at the dinner table. Everyone looked at him with attention. When I first opened that wooden box 6 months ago, I was angry about the secrets our family had kept. I felt like my whole life story had been a lie. Lewis paused, choosing his words carefully. But now I understand that some secrets are kept to protect people. Mum kept Marcus's identity secret to protect my relationship with Anthony. Marcus kept Grandpa's story secret because he was ashamed of his own choices. Grandpa kept his achievements secret because the world wasn't ready for them. Emma nodded, understanding where Lewis was going. All those secrets were kept with love. Lewis continued, and when the time was right, the truth came out in a way that could help people. Bernie raised his glass. To family secrets that become family legacies. To the Thompson racing heritage, Anthony added. To Marcus Thompson, who found courage when it mattered most. Carmen said. To James Thompson, who changed racing forever, Jake said. To the future of motorsport, Emma said. Lewis raised his own glass. To the wooden box that changed everything. As they drank their toast, Lewis felt complete in a way he had never experienced before. He knew exactly who he was and where he came from. He understood his place in a racing legacy that stretched back 4 generations. But more than that, he knew his purpose. His grandfather's hidden innovations would help make Formula One more advanced. His family's story would inspire young people who faced discrimination. His success would create opportunities for others who didn't think they belonged in racing. The wooden box his mother had given him at Silverstone had indeed changed everything, just as she had promised. But the changes weren't just about Lewis learning family secrets. The changes were about a hidden racing legacy finally getting recognition. They were about young engineers and drivers seeing that they belonged in motorsport. They were about a sport becoming more inclusive and more innovative. Some truths were worth waiting decades to discover. Some legacies were worth multiple generations to fulfill. Some boxes, once opened, could change not just one person's life, but the entire future of racing. As Lewis looked around the dinner table at his family, Anthony, who raised him, Carmen, who protected him, Emma, who inspired him, Jake, who supported him, and Bernie, who honored his grandfather's memory, he realized that the greatest innovation wasn't mechanical or technical. The greatest innovation was love. Love that transcended secrets, mistakes, and missed opportunities. Love that connected 4 generations of dreamers who believed that racing belonged to everyone brave enough to pursue it. The wooden box that had started this journey now sat in the Silverstone Museum, teaching visitors about James Thompson's hidden genius. But the real treasure hadn't been inside the box. The real treasure was the family Lewis had found, the legacy he had discovered, and the future he could now inspire. Some gifts were worth waiting a lifetime to receive, especially when they came with the power to change the world. Lewis Hamilton had opened a box and found his destiny. Now it was time to help others find theirs too. The Thompson racing legacy would continue, One innovation, one race, and one inspired young person at a time. The story that began with a mysterious wooden box at Silverstone Circuit had become something much bigger than any one family's secrets. It had become hope for the future of racing itself. From Marcus Thompson's courage to finally tell the truth, to James Thompson's brilliant innovations that were decades ahead of their time. This tale shows us that family secrets can sometimes become the most powerful gifts. We'd love to know where you're listening from. Are you tuning in from the UK, Canada, the US, or somewhere else around the world? Drop a comment and let us know your location. If you enjoyed this emotional journey through racing history and family discovery, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories just like this one. We share amazing tales of sports heroes, family mysteries, and inspiring real-life adventures every week. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and family. Stories like Lewis Hamilton's remind us that everyone has hidden talents and untold legacies. By sharing these tales, we spread kindness, awareness, and inspiration to people who might need to hear that they belong in whatever field they're passionate about. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. And remember, sometimes the most life-changing discoveries come in the smallest packages. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next story.